Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a special Tuesday edition of the Mortdog stream. My name is Mort, and today we're doing something a little different. I will not be playing any TFT, probably not responding to subs and things like that, because today I am focused on answering your questions. This is one of those rare times where I can just focus on giving you good answers, being honest, everything open. So yeah, we're going to go from there. So the way this is going to work is you can put it in the Q&A Mort Must Answer question. I've discounted it pretty heavily. 999 points, pretty easy. I'm not going to be able to get to everything. So if I don't answer your question, I'm going to refund it. I'm going to try to answer unique questions, not tough, not necessarily easy or hard questions, but just unique ones. Stuff that you can get easily, I'll probably just skip over. So, yeah. All right, so let's dive right in here. Stuff like that. Gonna skip. Steak and eggs in the morning or an omelet with some spicy French toast. See, I mean, like, these are easy questions. Steak and eggs, though. Steak and eggs. Okay, here's a good one. I'm going to copy and paste this, and we're going to go. All right, here we go. How much of your approach to game design is identifiable industry player patterns versus your gut feeling? Do you think you would be as good as a designer on COD or God of War? Sorry if the tone is rude. I saw a tweet that said some game design no-nos are just BS feelings and don't come from empirical logic, and I'd like to know your take on how you see yourself. Thanks for everything either way. This is a great question. I think every game genre has different strengths and uniques and properties that make it, like, you can be better at one type of design and worse at other type of designs. For example, I'm going to go to an extreme example. Let's take a very narrative-heavy game, something like Heavy Rain. That requires, you know, unique storytelling and a bit of a flair for, like, how to present a story. That is something I'm personally not as good at. I'm much more, my strengths lie in systems and other things like that. And so I don't think I would be as good at, like, say, a narrative design. But here's something that I think is kind of important that isn't conventional. I think the way to be a good game designer is to have breadth, to be good at everything, or at least try to understand every part of game design. A big part of this is, like, when I worked at Nintendo, we were a small team of about 40 devs. That was the thing we worked on. And so because of that, there were only like 4 or 5 designers on any particular project. And so that meant I had to do things like menu design, level design, enemy AI behavior, score system, stuff like that. And so you would spread out your skills amongst a lot of things, so that now I feel like I'm actually pretty good at a lot of elements of design. So could I work on something like Call of Duty? Yeah, probably. I may not be good at, like, hey, how do you get the exact gun to feel right and the timing of a shot or anything like that. But I think some of that system stuff translates really well. But again, it also requires, the other big thing about design is, like, player empathy. Player empathy is understanding what your players want, how they feel, and how to relate to them. You see so many decisions in the industry now where people will make, like, decisions that kind of blow your mind. You're like, why would you do that? Do players want that? I won't single anyone out, but yeah, there's just some really faulty decisions sometimes. And so the nice thing there is that my player empathy over the years has gotten really good. Comes with a lot of experience. But yeah, so there you go. All right, again, I already see 53 questions in queue, so I'm just going to start, like, randomly picking some of these. Bear with me here. Okay. Hey, Mort. Legends are a great addition. I'm not the best at positioning and always struggle with House Light Shield Portal. Any tips or advice? So House Light Shield Portal really comes down to, I think, if you oversimplify it, it comes down to 2 simple things. One is, do you have a tank strong enough to really, really benefit from all the extra health and the health regen? Something like a Cho'Gath or a Sejuani or something like that. If so, feel free to put it on your frontline tank. If you don't, put it on somebody in the back corner, some back DPS champion. That's really all you can do. Anything else other than that is probably too risky. So something like that should get you pretty far. All right. Again, I'm probably just gonna skip a few here. So, okay. And mods, feel free if you see like questions in there that you don't think are worth it, just reject them. Okay. Here's the thing. Pengu might not have the best augments, but it says in the description, great for beginners. What they don't want you to know is this legend sets the game mode to easy rather than medium. As a result, you get easier matchmaking and better shops suited for a beginner. This is in the hands of a master is far from balanced, and the dev's oversight was not realizing all players are currently allowed to select it. That's not a question. Why did I read this? This isn't a question. Anyway, this isn't true. But why did I read this? This is a question. Anyway, like I said, that's not actually true. So, okay, here's one. Let's try to actually get a question. Hey Mort, if you traveled back in time to the start of an earlier set with knowledge of how to balance end state of the set looks like, would you make it exactly like that balanced, or do you think it would lead to the game being extremely stale? Ooh, so this is a fun question. And this is one that comes up a lot because a lot of the like Reddit conspiracy theorists don't believe me when I say this, but if we could launch a set day one in a perfectly balanced state, would I do that? Absolutely. Abso-frickin-lutely. Because I think when TFT, if we can somehow achieve Nirvana, and the way I define balance here is every non-tank champion can be picked and go, you're the star. So let's say I'm randomly going to pick a champion from set 9 here. Samira. Samira can be picked, put 3 items on, have a unique comp built around it, have good augments and whatever, be the star, and win the game, right? And so this might be like a 6 Noxus, 2 Challenger, Samira reroll comp, something like that. Great. And if we can do that for every champion, and we somehow launch the game in that state, we would absolutely keep it that way. And I don't think the game would get stale. I think, if anything, that's what helps the game not be stale, right? Is you're like, oh, what's this player cooking this time? And seeing, a lot of people are like, oh, what is this player cooking? We want those cooking to be something that happens. And again, in a perfectly balanced meta, there'd be so many viable options and so many unique combinations. That'd be a great thing. And I don't think the game would get stale. And even if it would, that's when a next set would come out, right? So, like, again, if we somehow achieve Nirvana, we wouldn't patch. We would just, like, launch a set. It'd be great. And we would focus on making the next set Nirvana while it sat there and players had fun with it. So, I don't think the game would get stale. Okay. Again, randomly picking some questions here. Any plans for Chibi Fizz? I can't reveal that stuff, so you have to wait and see. What's your favorite episode of SpongeBob? I didn't actually watch SpongeBob. Least pick Portal. Last I checked, it was the Shifting Sands. Shifting Sands. Okay. Some of these quick ones I'll just knock out here. Ooh, here's a good one. Hey Mort, I find rogues to be more frustrating to play against than assassins. Against assassins, you could box in your carry or position a tank in the backline as counterplay. Against rogues, there isn't much counterplay. What are your thoughts on that? So, this one's interesting because, first off, we know that backline access trait, assassins, what were they called in set 3? Why am I blanking? Infiltrators. Assassins, infiltrators, rogues, and then hackers. Shade, all of those. We know they're frustrating, right? Nobody likes... It's this sort of antithesis to TFT. You work really hard to build a carry, right? You finally got your 2-star Aphelios with 3 items, and you're ready to watch him do some great stuff. You're ready to watch him unload. You worked hard. And the fight starts, and what happens? That Aphelios gets blown up. That's not fun, right? Like, people want to see the thing they worked hard to do, achieve the outcome, and when it can't, it feels bad. And we know that. But it's also one of those things that we don't want to shy away from and just be like, well, it didn't work this time, so we don't want to ever try it again. That was actually something that happened at Nintendo a lot. I really hated this. They were like, hey, we tried that 12 years ago and it didn't work. And it's like, well, times have changed. Lessons have changed. So we still want to find this, like, backline access trait that can be a successful thing in TFT. As far as like not much counterplay, the way I look at it is all the rogue trait is doing right now is sort of like move position and have a built-in edge of night. And it's not that insane. It's nice because it doesn't happen at the start of the fight. It happens a little later. So what happens is, you know, you get some damage in, your Aphelios gets to do some work, and then gets blown up. You mentioned counterplay, but the problem with Assassins is like, it was binary, right? You were either wrong side or you were boxed up, or that was it. So I don't know. I think we're still trying to find the right thing, but we'll keep looking at it. And again, I also feel like Rogues is like, it also depends on the design of the champions, right? Like Rogue wasn't inherently problematic, except a Z3 casts a spell once and blows up 2 units on your backline. So it's like, I'm still of the opinion that like the way to do backline access is not instant delete your champions, but yeah, again, we'll keep looking for the right thing here. Someone just said 999 is probably too cheap. Yeah, I'm trying to keep it accessible. I didn't want this Q&A to be something that only longtime viewers could participate in. I wanted anyone, even a first-time viewer, to come in and be able to ask a question. So it's kind of on purpose. What's your favorite ice cream? Chocolate chip cookie dough. Can you answer this question? Yes. Okay. Is it okay for me to compile a bunch of interesting answers and repost them later in text format? Yep. One of the things I have with my content, by the way, is my content is always free to use. I'm here for the community. I don't care if you take my stuff. I don't care what you do with it, clip it, whatever. As long as you don't do it out of context or like try to do it to make us look bad, that's the one time I'll be like, yo, can you chill with that? But otherwise, like, if I do a patch rundown, you can take it and do whatever with it. I don't care. Like, I'm here for the community. It's not for me. It's for you guys. So, what's wrong with Sugar Cone Poro? Team just needs to upload it. It's just a small issue. We'll get it out there someday. All right. Let's try this one. I have to copy paste. Okay. What would you say is the core thing that makes this set appeal to the majority of players? Yeah, so we've been talking about this quite a bit. Our insights team is actually working. Every set we do what's called a set report, where our insights teams gathers a bunch of data, a bunch of surveys, stuff like that, and then come back to us with the things they learn. This is really important because you don't want to fall to biases. This is like, well, I read on Reddit, and it's like, well, Reddit is one small, narrow part of the audience. Or my Twitter or Discord, like all of those are narrow subsets. Our insights team is much better at like getting a broad spectrum of opinions and things like that. So we're still actually waiting on that for this set. What I'll tell you is just my opinion from what I've seen. So this is not a comprehensive thing. But the first one is that turns out I think the base skins of League of Legends champions is like our S tier theme. A lot of League of Legends fans, over the years, League of Legends is a very big game. Many, many millions of players have played League of Legends at some point, have familiarity with champions. And so seeing your favorite champion and their base skin with other base skins is very digestible, very easy. And so I think base skins will be one of our S tier themes that is just going to be very popular. I think the Augment Refresh did a lot of heavy lifting here. The Augment Refresh... You know, people were tired of Celestial Blessing over and over and over. There's a bunch of really unique augments. I also think some of the designers on the team worked really hard to get some of the augments be really interesting and unique. Even if some of them aren't like challenger level augments, augments like What the Forge are very fun and create some really cool moments. And then I think the portals also did some pretty heavy lifting as well. The variations on portals, it wasn't, we didn't learn it from Fortune's Favor, but something that Fortune's Favor really, really showed is very clear, is if you have base TFT and you throw lots of sprinkles and candy and bonus items and whatever at them, it can be a lot of fun. And so having the portal sort of be that like light variation of Fortune's Favor sometimes also is really, really fun. And so I think we see that with the popularity of things like Jace's Workshop, Scuttle Puddle, and stuff like that. That's just really a lot of fun. And then the last thing, and this one will be controversial, but we've seen at low elo especially, legends have been a very nice help. It allows players to get in to the game and understand it. It's like, I can pick this legend, I can kind of know what's coming, I can remove some of that unpredictability that can make the game less digestible. And so the combination of all of these things, again, you know, I kind of hyped it up leading up to the set, and no one ever believes me because they just think I'm, you know, riot hyping, but like, we had a lot going into this set, and so I think all of that combined is made for a really appealing set, and, you know, the challenge will be, can we do it again? We'll see. Do the opening carousel like this will stay? We're still figuring that out. No, nothing to announce yet. Okay, let's answer this one. Mort, in the community with most of the main figureheads being toxic in nature, how do you handle the massive amount of backlash the team gets due to such figureheads? Okay, so I'm going to push back on that a bit. I do not think most of the main figureheads are toxic. I think the word toxic gets thrown around a lot, and the definition of what is toxic kind of gets used a little too much, right? Like, let's be real here. I think a lot of people are we have to look at the number one here. We have to look at Soju. He is the number one TFT figurehead as far as like streamers go and things like that. Do I think Soju is toxic? No. Do I think Soju has bad days? Sure. Do I think he's hyperbolic? Yeah, of course. But that's not a bad thing, right? It's like, he's doing it for entertainment. He's doing it for fun. He's not a bad person in any way. And so I don't think it's really necessarily on him. And what I also will say is that over time, people like Soju have actually gotten better, right? They've sort of learned, because the reality is too, it's funny, in gaming communities, most of the times your figureheads or your influencers or whatever are like 19 to 21-year-old kids. And I'm going to be honest, when I was 19 to 21, I was an idiot. I was an idiot. Just I look back on myself on 19 to 21 and I'm like, I'm kind of ashamed sometimes. Everyone grows and matures, especially in your like 18 to 25 range. And so I'm not going to look at some 22-year-old who's figuring life out and be like, well, that asshole, he's ruining our community. No, man. That's, if anything, one of the reasons why I think Soju got so successful is because he's relatable. A lot of what he's expressing on stream is a lot of how players are feeling when they're playing the game. Soju is a glimpse into how a lot of players feel. And so I think that's just real. And like, if anything, you have to study that and understand that to be a really good game designer. And so it's like, when are these moments that someone like Soju is reacting and feeling a lot of frustration? Is that frustration real? Because if it is, it's probably a lot of things going on. Now, again, you need a filter because, again, he is some hyperbolic. But yeah, so I don't really blame the figureheads. I don't think they're toxic. I don't think that's what causes it. I think the massive amount of backlash, though, is because, unfortunately, this is like a weird society thing, and I'm about to say my personal opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm just a game designer. I'm not some wise guru. I'm not a politician, whatever. But, like, we've ended up in this world where a lot of people are very lonely and very unhappy, and they haven't figured out how to be happy. I think things like social media have made people become less happy in life. And when people are unhappy, they take that out on others. They want to bring people down to that level. If I'm unhappy, everyone else should see the world the way I do, and they should be unhappy with me. And so that's where you get these echo chambers of like Reddit, of like these people who are just very sad. Yeah, let's all be sad together. Let's tell everyone else how to be sad. And so that's what generates a lot of that backlash. And the reality is, I'm not going to fix that through a video game or anything like that. But, you know, you just have to understand that that's where those people are coming from. And it is what it is, you know. So you try to fix the problems you can fix. Okay, cool. One thing from Set 9 release you were super pleased with, something you were disappointed with. Disappointed? Yordles? Pleased with? Like I said, augment rework, portals. I think those were the two big ones I'm pretty happy with. Skipping that. Again, just... What would your job be if you weren't a video game developer? Math teacher was my backup, but man, that pay is pretty scary. Pretty scary. Okay. Mort, do you ever take inspiration from other game settings, mechanics, etc. when designing sets or maybe just champions? So the answer is yes, of course. But not like direct, right? We don't look at a mechanic and go, oh my god, that's so cool, I want it. But like, I'm trying to think of how to do this without spoiling anything. For example, one of our set leads was working on a set, and then to get inspiration, took a trip to kind of like dig into stuff and got some inspiration for stuff like that, right? And it's like, oh, what would people who like this want to do? You know, there's a lot of stuff like that. Realistically, I'll also say that like the time I get to play other games anymore is pretty low, and so trying to get inspiration from other games is harder. But more recently, during the summer break especially, I've been trying to understand why like Diablo bothers me now, why I don't want to dive into games too deep. And I think a combination of like live service games, games like TFT, games like Slay the Spire, they've kind of figured out how to give us all the excitement of a particular game in like 2 hours. You know, it's really hard nowadays, at least for me, to play a 40-hour game or a 50-hour game when you already kind of know what's going to happen 20 hours in, 30 hours in, 40 hours in. You know, I don't really want to like slowly level up. Like with Diablo in particular, what happened to me is I finished the campaign and I was like, okay, the first thing I need to do is like get my renown going. I need to get my renown going. And then I'm like, I start doing this and the actions I had to do were just so repetitive. And I already could figure out in my mind that like, okay, look, I know once I get there, here's what I'll be. I'm just like, this isn't worth another 40 hours. I've got better things to do. So at least for me, I'm more interested in figuring out ways to have that excitement in like 2 hours. And that's why I love like the original game like this for me was Smash Brothers. When we would play Smash Brothers at lunch every day at Nintendo, and I mean literally every day for like 10 years, we played it every day. And what was so cool about Smash Brothers, so we played with items on low, and we played like 4-player. Which, yes, I know, casual, whatever. But the cool thing about it was every day you'd play, something crazy would happen you'd never seen before, right? Like, for example, you up smash somebody right into a crate that happened to spawn, and that crate explodes, they die, and out of the crate came 2 bombs that one person happened to be kicking, and they go flying. And it was like, you have these wacky moments you'd never seen before. And that was fun. That was why we could play Smash Brothers for 10 years, is every day was different. And that's what I want a game like TFT to be. I want you to play 500 games of TFT and see something you've never seen before. My favorite YouTuber from this set so far is the game where I got What the Forge, and I was playing 6 Bruiser, and then it was on Yorick's Graveyard. So every item I got from Yorick's Graveyard as I killed people was more Ornn items. And it was like this crazy, wacky game. And it's probably my favorite YouTuber I've got on stream this set. And it's like, I'll probably never repeat that game again. But that's what I want in TFT. That's what I want for video games, is like exciting, condensed gameplay in an hour or two. So, there you go. All right, again... skipping over, oh my god, there's 144 in queue. Mods, if you want to dig through any of this, cool. If not, this is going to be hard. Any thoughts on more clarity with Noxious trait and the indication of players you haven't conquered? At this point, the set's already out. It's probably going to be hard to add that clarification, so I would call it a design flaw if that's really important information. When will TFT have a game mode like recent arena event where players could go 2v2? I see what you did there. All right. Here's a good one. Any plans on changing how overtime works? Maybe get the buffs over a couple seconds. Feels bad to lose a fight because the enemy cast comes just as overtime starts. I guess, to me, this is like, it's combat RNG. You know, it always is going to feel bad to lose. That's true. On the opposite, it feels good sometimes when your cast comes. Our goal should be that most fights take place between 18 to 25 seconds. That's where we want most fights to be. A fight should last 18 to 25 seconds. If we're seeing a ton of fights take less than 18 seconds, our fight pacing is probably too fast and we need to lower damage across the board. If we're seeing a lot of fights go to overtime, then we've probably got too much power in our tanks, or our damage is too low and we need to turn that back up. Overtime should feel like an exception, and so we want to make sure that when overtime hits, it's supposed to end the fight, right? Like, the game needs to end, and so ramping it up doesn't really fit that bill. It's like, it doesn't end it quickly. We want 30 seconds to be like, okay, time for the fight to end, let's go. So I would say so far no plans on changing it, other than we recently changed it so that AD champions weren't at a massive disadvantage. If we find something like that again, where it's like certain champs just have a massive advantage, we'll rebalance it. But I think it's still supposed to be end the fight and end the fight now. That's the goal. All right. Okay, here's a simple one. I'll answer this. Hey Mort, did you ever consider adding a portal that turned the game into a Hyperroll game or Fortune's Favor, for example? I mean, we did talk about it to at least consider the idea, but we very strongly went against it. Our bar for TFT, the core mode, and I'll always echo this bar, is, are we okay with whatever happens here happening in the final game at Worlds and deciding who wins our world championship? Because while we're not a hardcore esport or anything like that, we do still want the game to be, you know, competitive, skill expressive, and things like that. And so, do I want the final game of Worlds being decided because it got switched to a Hyperroll game? Probably not. I probably don't want that. That's a whole other thing. We don't want players to learn that much. You mentioned Fortune's Favor. Again, Fortune's Favor, though, we're like kind of close, right? Like, would I consider a portal where somebody starts with 10 extra gold? Oh, wait, that's Scuttle Puddle. You know? Someone in chat actually just said, is Sump better than Hyperroll? I mean, yeah, that's actually fair, right? Sump is a close comparison. But I think the difference there is, at least even in Sump, the core fundamentals of TFT are still the same, right? Like, Hyperroll changes the timing, the health, right? Like, how transformative do you really want a portal to be? And the answer is, you don't want it to change all of the core mechanics of the game, right? Like, I don't want a portal that says, all right, now everyone starts at 20 health and the round structure change. No, that's too much. But Fortune's Favor, like, we're not that far off. If you told me we were going to add a portal that said, you know, everyone starts with a bunch of extra stuff, people would actually probably love that. And so it's not the worst idea. Okay, again, I'm just trying to randomly sift through some of these. Oh, here's a good one. Okay, how do you reconcile the difference in balance between average players and the top 1% of player base? Okay, so this is a question that, again, I think some of the negative Nancys won't believe me on. But when we balanced TFT, I made the decision very early in set 1 that we were going to balance TFT as if computers were playing it. And the reason for that is that TFT is not actually a high APM game, right? Like, we want it to be a game that tests your knowledge. We don't want it to be a game where, you know, whoever has the best reaction time and whoever can point their mouse the fastest wins. If you are smart and knowledgeable, you can win. And so in that logic, we want to balance it around computers are playing it. If computers are playing it, what is the best comp? How does that work? And so, yeah, an augment like Think Fast, for example, is like right on the line, because a computer playing Think Fast can make that augment very, very powerful. Probably needs to be nerfed. But this can have side effects. It doesn't often happen, but there are definitely certain comps that underperform or overperform at low elo. Probably the best example of this right now on live is Void. 8 Void, if you look at low elo lobbies, dominates. It is an insanely powerful comp. You look at high elo though, and 8 Void is like mediocre. It's fine. It's good. It's not S tier. Like, you know, we just watched Freljord Cup, and like, how many people played 8 Void? Like 2. But again, it is what it is, right? We've just made that decision to balance around the computers. And so what should happen is, aspirationally, someone at low elo should look at that and go, oh, well, high elo have figured out ways to beat Void. I need to do the same. I need to figure out how to beat that. And it's not, you know, insane APM that's blocking it. It's just knowledge. And so since it's just knowledge, we want players to be chasing after that knowledge and trying to understand the game to get better at it. And I think that's a good thing. So, hey, tell a funny story about time you worked in an Aram Dev team. So this is a funny myth, that the idea that there was an Aram Dev team. There wasn't an Aram Dev team. There was a modes team. I think right now there is a modes team. The modes team is in charge of Aram. When I did Aram stuff back in my day, I did it as a side project. The only reason the Aram balance changes happened was because we did that thing in modes, and then I went to Medler and said, I'm going to keep doing this. I think it's good for the game. He gave me permission. But, like, it was a side project. It wasn't even my main job when I did it. I just was passionate about it and wanted to keep making it better. I would love to go back and do some stuff to Aram right now. I've been talking to Dan Emmons a little bit, but I do need to focus on TFT. So, as a lead developer, do you get to interact with the legal department at Riot? Like, twice. Not often. Right now, we're interacting with them a little bit, but not often. Okay, so now I'm in the part where I'm like 30 minutes ago questions. Mortdog, when do you plan to retire? 60, maybe? I don't know, we'll see. Not anytime soon. We'll see. Who knows, maybe my mind will change as I get older. Okay, do you think the professional player and streamer community's approach to endlessly complaining, for lack of better words, has negative impact on the broader community's state of the game? So, the short answer to this question is yes, but the longer answer, and this goes back to that other question I answered earlier, is that I was talking to our comms guy, Roger, about this a year ago, and the truth of the matter is, this has nothing to do with TFT, this has nothing to do with the gaming community. Negativity gathers more views, negativity gathers more clicks, negativity gathers more opinions. This is why the news for 60 years has been, here's all the negative things that happen that you should pay attention to, and things that might kill you. Your shampoo might have poison in it. Stay tuned. Find out. That's just reality. And so trying to get the TFT community to somehow be better than all of society, not going to happen. Not going to happen. My approach to this personally has been, you know, try to be a beacon of positivity and stuff like that, but you can only fight human nature so much, you know. So here's one from my sister. Interesting. Let's see what my sister's asking. I gotta ask you. From set 1 to now, how do you feel your skills as a developer have developed? I know a huge part is community feedback, but I wonder about personal skills and goals. Does TFT tickle your design dreams? I think Nintendo gathered a lot of my core design skills. And I think a lot of those core design skills got developed in that 20 to 30 range. And I think that made me the designer who I am. Like, I came to Riot with a group of set of skills. I sound like a freaking Taken. I came to Riot with a set of skills that Nintendo helped me develop and helped me get good at. And I think Riot hasn't necessarily made them better. I think Riot has allowed me to understand different aspects of design. For example, I was very Japan console centric, and now I'm a little bit more broad. But I was able to exercise those skills in ways that I wasn't before, right? Like, working on a bunch of puzzle games over and over. But now I got to do like systems design and monetization design. I think my time on Pi working on the loot system allowed me, but like I already had the math skills behind that, and so it allowed me to sort of stretch into some cool stuff there. But TFT in particular I really like because there's just so many systems. There's so many things to adjust and tinker with and adjust. Because like I said, I was a math guy growing up. So it does. Don't get me wrong, would I love to do, like I said, some Metroidvania level design or a roguelike or something? Like, I've got other things I'd love to do, but TFT tickles a lot of it. And the other thing is, as a designer, I've been blessed that, like, I never went more than, like, 2 or 3 years without shipping something. The worst time in my career was Project Hammer, where that was, like, 2 years before we shipped something, and then we switched over and did Aura Climber and the Mini Mario game. Like, but there are some designers that will work on a game for like 5 years, 7 years, and then have it get canceled. Or, you know, they're just not get to ship anything. Or even worse, like they'll work for 5 or 7 years on a game, have it ship, and it's terrible. I've never shipped a terrible game. I've shipped mediocre games, but I've never shipped a terrible game. I think that's the stuff that I'm really happy about. And TFT allows me to ship something new to players every 2 weeks, something big every 3 or 4 months, and I love that. I love getting to ship stuff to players and get to see that reaction. It's very fun. Okay. Oh my god, I'm at 167 backlog here. I should have found a way to like upvote these or something. Maybe next time I'll do like a put your questions here and upvote the ones you want answered. All right, again, I'm just kind of randomly sifting through here. Why is there no tank carry that is tank stall with items and several backline without items? Because fights have to end is the big thing. We've tried that before. An infinite recurring tank just means you get 8-0'd and it's not very fun. So, but people play strong line tanks, so I don't necessarily agree that there is no tank carry. And yeah, Poppy is quite good, so... Will an ability-changing trait like Astro or Fable ever be released again? Yes. Absolutely. At some point, yes. What is... Okay. Here we go. What is the goal for the implementation of Legends? And do you guys think it has been successful so far? So this is an interesting question, and for one of the first times... yeah, I know. Ads will autoplay. I can't do anything about it, guys. Sorry. What is the goal for the implementation of Legends, and do you guys think it has been successful so far? So, you guys know I'm like super open and honest with you, but one of the things I can't talk about is future plans, right? If we have a plan for something, let's say in set 16 or set 15 or whatever, I can't talk about it. I have to keep it calm, right? So, with Legends, if there was something we were thinking about in the future, I have to keep it close to the chest here. So I have to keep that internal. So I'm actually going to kind of dodge this question a little bit. But what I will say is that one of the short-term goals for Legends was we wanted to make sure that players... because right now there's a lot of variation in TFT, right? Like the champions you get, the items you get, the augments you get, who you're up against, all that. There's a lot of permutations in TFT. And for a lot of our players or potential players, that is overwhelming. That is overwhelming. And so we wanted Legends to be a way for you to like reduce that permutations a little bit and lean into some of those variations you like. If you really, really like, you know, reroll an open fort, there's some Legends you could pick that kind of like lean into that a little. And so, do I think that's been successful so far? Mixed bag. I think for low elo, yeah, it's actually been very successful. We've heard a lot of stories of low elo players being like, this has allowed us to get into the game more. So that part's been great. At high elo, has it been successful? No. Big part of this is balance or perceived balance. And this is something I admittedly am not sure what to do about. Because at least in high elo, what's happened is there's been an echo chamber. It's mostly prevalent in NA, but other regions do it too. If one person says Ornn is the best legend, now there is a 70% pick rate of Ornn. Even if that difference is like 0.1% of top 4 rate or whatever, everyone kind of copy pastes. It was kind of nice to see in Freljord Cup, and also in China, there was a player who, in Freljord Cup, it was Spicy Appies, and in China, it was the player who ended up winning or whatever, but they ended up picking Ezreal, even after the nerf. And Ezreal was still good. But the fact that nobody else was even considering Ezreal is weird. It's just weird. We're starting to see more of it, though. We're starting to get to that point where legend diversity is getting better. Froden actually sent me a screenshot yesterday of some tournament he was watching where all 8 players had a different legend. And it's like, great, we're getting there. So hopefully we can get it there, but we haven't been there up until now, whether that be through reality or perception. And we need to figure out how to get there. That's the part that I think has been unsuccessful, but that doesn't mean give up on it. I really hated the people who would post things like, well, this proves the legend system is garbage and get rid of it. It's like, well, no, it proves the legend system needs a tune-up. It needs adjustment. We can improve it. We can make it better. And so we're going to try to get there. So we'll see. I think as long as, you go into a tournament and there's like 6 different legends in a various lobby, I think we'll be in an okay spot. So, yeah. All right. Cool. Cool. Again, just kind of skipping a few randomly. N64 Dreamcast. It had Marvel vs. Capcom on home consoles. Although I do love Mario 64. But Dreamcast was so cool. Okay. Here we go. I swear there could be a mod like filtering these full time. Hey Mort, I really like the idea of introducing non-league champions into TFT. We do too. Loved how you guys made Silco a great unit, Dragons 2. I remember once that Riot said it's a thing. Question is, are there any plans to make non-league characters? So what I'll say about this is, through things like Silco, Soam, the T-Hex, we love making new characters. I mean, who doesn't, right? If you're a creative designer and you're like, I want to make a brand new character, that just sounds awesome. That sounds great, right? Who doesn't want to make a new character? That's just fun for everyone involved. But the reality is, obviously, the cost to make that is much, much higher, right? If we want to put Twisted Fate in a set, we grab Twisted Fate, we put him in, we take from his existing spells, modify it slightly, bing, bam, boom, 2 or 3 days. No problem. You want to make Barney the Magic Watermelon Buffalo. Well, you've got to concept art that, make him, figure out what he does, go from there, and that could take a month, and so the cost of implementing a new thing is much, much higher. So we have to weigh those costs into the benefit, right? Is it really that much better to make Barney the Watermelon Buffalo or Twisted Fate? And you have to find the right time. But again, to close the question off, you said, will there be plans to make more? I mean, yeah, we'll definitely do it again. The team has grown, the team has gotten bigger, and I think there's a big appetite for doing more of our own unique stuff. So there'll definitely be more in the future. It's a question of when, it's a question of what. But like to say we'd never do it again, no way. I mean, like Silco was a success, Soam was a success, T-Hex. If you ignore the Piltover economy problem, the T-Hex concept was a success. So, TLDR, set 10, Barney the Watermelon Buffalo coming. You heard it here. Any plans for a Shifting Sand rework in the future? What I'll say is all of the low... So, if you look at the pick rate of portals right now, there are 3 buckets. The super, super high pick rate portals. These are Jace's Workshop, Scuttle Puddle, and the other Piltover one that gives you a Prismatic. Those 3 have like a super high pick rate. Everybody freaking loves those, which, again, shocker. People like getting free stuff. Then you have the middle of the pack. This is things like Ornn's Forge, a lot of the Ionia ones. stuff like that. Those are the middle of, yeah, Targon Prime. Those are the middle of the pack. We're not going to touch the middle of the pack. We like the middle of the pack. Those are great. And then we have this group that's like the lows, the like nobody likes this crap. Those are the ones we do want to try to like improve. This is things like Immortal Bastion, Shifting Sands. If we have a good idea to improve them and live team has the time, we're going to try to keep improving them. Now, somebody in chat are saying Stillwater. Stillwater is actually not in that bucket. Stillwater is not in that bucket. There are people that love Stillwater, believe it or not. But that does lead me to a slightly different transition, which I will say, we've been talking a lot about, banning players for exploits. That one's obvious. I'd hate to have to do this soon, but it is getting close. If we have to start banning players who are toxic to Stillwater fans, we will. Stop treating people bad for having different tastes than you. We're starting to see some reports of people harassing other people for picking Stillwater. If that continues, you'll start getting banned. The TFT community is not going to deal with toxicity like this, so stop it. If you don't like Stillwater, that's fine. Don't treat people like crap just because they do. So, warning you now, if you don't want to lose your account, don't be an asshole. It's that simple. How come Final Reserves doesn't allow a player to reach level 10? No reason other than long text on the description. It was already a long augment, so more text on the augment would have probably overflowed it. Then the other thing I'll say is that, like, then people will ask, do level up and Final Reserve stack? Can you get to level 11? Right now we have 3 augments that can't really stack. I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know. Oh, here's a good one. God, I'm at 38 minutes ago. I feel bad because I'm like 38 minutes into the queue. I'm going to like reset here in a second to try to get some questions that have been asked recently. Hello, Mr. Mortimer. Now that mid-sets will be gone, has the team considered introducing a new unit in the middle of the sets like earlier sets? Okay, so this question is a great question because it is the definition of scope creep. We started off with sets, and then we were like, let's add a few champions, and players liked that. And that's cool, but we saw that adding a few champions didn't really move the needle much. And so it was like, well, it wasn't really worth. And it was like, well, what if we added like 20 new champs and did a mid set? And it's like, well, that's cool. Players like that. But it's still not as big as a full set. So what if instead of 20 new champs, we added 58 new champs and just made another full set? That's cool. And it'll have some impact. And then in those smaller short timelines, we want to add a few champions. And then a smaller timeline, a few champions didn't move the needle. So what if we added 10? And what if we had mids? Like, you see where it's going? It's like you're just kind of creeping it more and more and more. Now, that's not to say the TFT team isn't insane. And will we ever not add a champion in the middle of a set? Maybe not. I could see a world where we might just do that. But we have to be really, really careful. Because that is literally the definition of scope creep. And that is how you get the artisan engineers to want to destroy you, because you're just adding more and more and more work to the pile. So one of the big things about getting rid of mid sets was actually trying to, because it is a player focused decision because it means you get more new sets, but it was also a dev focused decision because it means we don't have to make mid sets in 2.5 months. And so I don't know that we'd want to do that again, but who knows? Maybe there's some like creative plan where like we know a champion is coming and we can plan for it or something, and it's not giant scope creep. So who knows? The future, we've got years ahead of us, and we're going to have to do some pretty creative stuff to keep TFT alive. So in a good way. Okay, I am going to, again, I'm going to get to where I'm only 20 minutes behind and start answering questions. So if you were in that 30 to 20 minutes ago range, oh my God, there's so many. There's so many questions. You are all inquisitive. That's okay, by the way. It's okay to be inquisitive. Oh my God, there's 167 in queue. All right, let's answer this one. Hey Mort, are there? Okay, I shouldn't have picked this one. Hey Mort, are there any plans to bring TFT outside of PC and improve the mobile app? As someone who plays on Steam Deck, controls are definitely viable across platforms. I think improve mobile app, yes, just big old yes. We know the mobile app needs improved. We want to improve it. The team has grown a bunch. It's on the list. I can't commit to anything, but are we working on it? Yes. Might be, I mean, yeah, someone in chat just said iPad coming soon TM. Like, yeah, I get it. This is one where you actually shouldn't trust me. Like, just because I said it might come, don't get your hopes up. It might be 2 years later. It might be 5 years. Like, don't hold me to it because I can't commit to it. But mobile-wise, we definitely know we want to improve it. This is definitely a soon TM. Like, don't count it soon. As far as other platforms, I'm admittedly skeptical that there are many console gamers that want to play TFT. As a console gamer, it's just not the game. Console doesn't really do competitive TF multiplayer that well. I don't know. So we'd have to really find a good argument for that work. But now putting it in your Tesla or your Samsung fridge, there you go. See, now that's a platform. But here's a good one. I actually like this question. Any consideration on the team to change matchmaking on TFT to be less RNG? It feels frustrating knowing sometimes you are second strong in the lobby and go fourth because you fight the strongest 2 times on stage 6. I know it is not an easy workaround, but is it something you're working for? So this is kind of a loaded question, but I do like the question because it's funny. It's like the gambler's fallacy, the confirmation bias, right? Like, you will recognize the times you lost because you fought the stronger person in the lobby, and you will not recognize the times you win because you didn't fight the strongest person in the lobby, right? You always remember your bad beats in poker. You never remember when things went your way. And so matchmaking inherently has to be random. And so so there are going to be times where it does come down to a 50-50, and sometimes you're going to lose that 50-50. That's just this reality of the matchmaking. There's not really a logical way to fix that. But here's the one thing I do think needs to be improved. Right now, let's say we finally get to stage 3-1. Okay, so we've got past the early game. From 3-1 to like 5-1, there are always 3 champs in your 3 players in your pool, right? You see the 3 sword icons. You can fight those 3 players. We'll just call them player A, B, and C. And the random gives you B. Now it's A, C, and D. The random gives you C. Now it's A, D, and E. The random gives you D. And you see where I'm going with this? Like, the random never gives you A. And so you have games where you never play player A. This is most commonly noticed when players do the thing where they're like, 2 players are both at 100 health, and they've never fought each other, right? Like, that's the common one that people point out, and they're like, how is this okay? And my personal opinion, and this is on my like backlog list of things to do, because it's a minor improvement, but it would be nice, is currently, no matter what point you are in the game, those 3 people all have an equal chance to fight each other. 33%, 33%, 33%. I think what should happen is every time you don't fight somebody, but they're in your pool, those odds go up slightly. So 33%, and that you didn't fight A, now maybe it's 38%, and now you don't fight A, now it's 43%, and something like that. So it like slowly tries to like make it more likely to prevent that bad case scenario where you never fight player A. That's the thing on my backlist that I think we should try to get in. And again, this is just another one of those things that like we do a lot of, random design systems, and we have a lot of back-end systems to prevent the worst case scenarios. This is another one that needs one of those worst case scenario systems protecting it. So will that come soon? No. Will that come someday? Hopefully. All right. Again, rejecting. All right, here's a long one. Let's see what this person's asking. Hey Mort, started playing in set 6, and now that I'm hardcore playing 3 sets later, in hindsight, it feels like I missed out on so many cool trait combos and openers that are never played. My question is, how much thought goes into the openers that are available and combos? Does the team consciously map out openers and trait permutations to try and balance before a set releases? Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. A lot of our set design team will very much look at, like, what is my level 4 comp? What is my level 5 comp? Do these comps make sense? Are there front lines? That is one of the big parts of set design, because like the vertical stuff is easy, and the late game permutations are actually pretty easy, right? You look at a champ trait, you go, I mean, you see pro players do this whenever we reveal a new set, right? They go in and they're like, hey, I'm gonna grab this 4 cost. This 4 cost has these 2 traits. I'm gonna power up those 2 traits, and there's my comp, easy. But early game mapping out is definitely important and something you want to do. Most recently, the biggest revelation we had that we're looking into, and I'll share this little behind the scenes, is we noticed in set 8, I think it's set 8, early set 8, a lot of the 1-cost champions were being played except one of them, and it was Lux. And some of you might be going, well, that's because Lux was underpowered or her spell missed or whatever, but no, that wasn't it. What was actually happening, it was because Lux was the 1 cost that didn't share a trait with another 1 cost. And so having all the 1 costs share a trait with at least one other 1 cost creates these nice like anchor points where you can then build your comp around, right? Like, oh, I got 2 of the brawlers. Oh, I got 2 of the whatever. And like then you can start building from there. And so that was a revelation we actually just had recently that you see in set 9 is like every 1 cost shares a trait with at least one other 1 cost. And we'll probably be moving forward, but that's an example where, like, yeah, we're definitely trying to look at early game and make sure that there's onboarding. So, yeah. Why do your questions get given rejected? Because there's 179 of them, and mathematically speaking, there's about a 92% chance your question gets rejected. It's not personal. All right, did that one. How does your daily routine working on TFT look like? So this one's pretty varied. It's kind of dangerous to answer this because it reveals how much I work, but the short version of this is wake up, do some of my own projects that I'm thinking about. This could be a whatever thing, something I can do on my own. Team comes in, playtest, give playtest feedback, work with team on their projects, to help them solve their problems, have one-on-ones, manager, stuff like that throughout the day, and then end of day kind of repeat and go back to the self projects. That's the short version. An example of a project on my own is like, well, I can't say that one. Never mind, that one's not out yet. What's an example of my project that I can talk about? I mean, like the item tooltip rework, like stuff like that. I don't know. But small things that like I just want to do to make the game better or stuff like that. So yeah, that's the quick version. Ooh, here's a good one. I'm trying not to dodge spicy questions. I don't want you to think I'm dodging spicy questions. Hey Mort, I'm kind of unhappy with the Battle Pass rewards. My favorite thing has always been getting the set-specific eggs that give some sort of new tacticians from the set. I didn't get anything new from the Treasure Realm boxes. What has the overall feedback been to the new system, and what can we expect for the mid-set? Okay, so before I answer this question, I do want to say one thing, which is one of the things when you are talking to players about the game, one of the rules is you should never talk about other people's work or things you are not directly involved in. Because it like creates this weird thing where like you're taking credit for their work, or you don't know what you're talking about, you're not an expert. It's a very good rule you shouldn't do. And because the team was so small early on, and I was in the position I'm in as a game director or design director, I could talk about a lot of things because I was literally involved in a lot of things. But now, as the team has grown, I'm actually at the position where I can't be involved in everything. It's just the team's too big. And so it's actually hard for me to talk about some things sometimes because I'm not involved in them anymore. It's actually a challenge, and it's actually the first time in my career, because I've always worked on small teams, and with small teams, I could always be involved in everything. It's actually something I'm personally struggling with, because I've had to be like hands-off projects anymore. I'm like, what are they doing? But I have to let go. It's a hard thing I'm not familiar with. But I don't want to dodge this question, so here's what I'll tell you, is that the team that's working on this is like someone new is working on this space now. They're taking a very serious look at it. They're taking the feedback very seriously. And there are plans to definitely, like, we know players aren't happy with the status quo, and they're working on it. Like, when that's coming, how that's coming, can't talk about that, and it's not my place and all that. But, like, we know it can be better. We know it can be better, and it will be better, and there are people working on it to make it better. So, that's what I can say. So, again, I wish I could say more, but again, like, I'm just not the right person to ask. We've got very capable, very smart rioters working on this, making it better. What a nothing answer. I mean, again, that's because it's not my place, right? Like, I can't tell you the things they're working on. I've seen some of the stuff they're working on, and I can tell you that I am confident in their direction. I look at what they're planning, because again, things take time to implement, right? Like, let's say hypothetically, this is fake, but let's say I'm a genius and I've got the perfect plan on how to improve monetization and the treasure realms and whatever. It still takes time to implement, right? So if they have these plans, it's going to take time to implement. And so what I can tell you is, again, the team working on it now, I am confident in their new direction, and I am confident in the improvements. So, but I can't tell you that stuff. And so if that's a nothing answer to you, I'm sorry, but I have to be a professional, and that's what it is. So, ooh, 13 minutes ago. Dude, wait, 13 minutes ago and I'm 200 behind? Oh my God. All right. Well, I'm never going to catch up. This is an unending thing. I don't know. Do I need to raise the cost of points or something? I give up, man. Okay, well, anyway, I'm just going to keep going. So, hey, Mortdog, have you ever thought about having rotating units traits like Hearthstone Battlegrounds has rotating minions types every game? So, have we thought about it? Yes, we have thought about it. Fun fact, Dota Underlords did this with their jail system. And upon thinking about it, what we've concluded is it's awful. It's awful. At least the way Dota Underlords did, but, you know, like, going into a game, like, let's say you're a big fan of a particular type of comp, going into a game and seeing, hey, I just can't play the thing I really wanted to play, really sucks. It's just not fun. So, in addition, like, hey, this comp is only good if this other comp isn't also in the system. Like, it becomes these weird permutations you have to think about that aren't really healthy. So I'd rather just have the set be the set and you play and learn the set, rather than the set be this thing that changes. And the Dota Underlords version was especially weird, because, like, what would happen is you would have a trait like, say, Bruiser that had 6 Bruiser, and then, like, you'd go into a game and only 4 of the Bruisers would be available, which was weird. At least Hearthstone Battleground does it better, right? Where, like, if there's no Murlocs, there's no Murlocs. But, like, they would take out partial traits. It was very weird. But either way, we've decided that really isn't for us in TFT. Now, is that to say we would never do anything remotely close to that? Well, no, because that's closing off design space. And who knows, maybe there's a wild idea where there's a variation of this that works. But, like, to be so on the nose and be like, hey, every game, 7 of the trait, like, nah, I just don't think so. I don't think we're going to do that. As a really simplified example, like, hypothetically, let's say there was, I mean, I guess Rise is kind of this, actually. So I don't have to make an example. Rise is kind of this. Rise is probably the closest we'll ever get to this, which is, hey, every game there's a 5 cost that's slightly different. Or yeah, Mirage. Mirage is probably close, but they were still the same champions, right? So, I don't know. That's probably the closest we'll get. Okay. Here's a good one. I need a drink, 1 second. Hey Mort, is there any plan for an updated new player experience like a tutorial PvE training mode? I've tried getting friends into the game, but it's far too much knowledge and pressure for them with limited time in game to learn. Okay, so the answer to this is yes, we want to improve the new player experience. That's the high level answer. We want to improve the new player experience. How? Can't tell you. Again, it's one of those things that we have to keep close to the chest. But I also think we have to be careful because when a lot of people hear new player experience, they hear things like tutorials. And what I'll tell you from my time in the games industry and research, like, nobody likes tutorials. Players don't like tutorials. Players do not like playing through tutorials. Players do not feel like talked down to. Tutorials are not great. There was a talk, I've mentioned this before, but there was a GDC talk from the original Plants vs. Zombies team I love, which was like, get a player to do a thing, they'll learn the thing, that's it, right? Plants vs. Zombies did it really, really well. I think there are better ways to teach players. Then the other thing I'll talk about is that one of the mistakes a lot of game devs might make is trying to make their game always appeal to everyone. TFT is what TFT is, right? We are a complicated systems auto battler. It is what it is. And I think trying to simplify the game to make a bunch of people understand it is probably not the play. There are going to be people out there that just don't like this kind of game, and that's okay, right? Like, I think trying to change the game to appeal to everyone will just lose our core audience. And so there are just going to be people that look at TFT and go, this is too much to learn. No, thank you. Goodbye. And that's okay. That's okay. But the big thing we need to do is there are some people out there that would really like TFT. They would like TFT, but that barrier to entry is still too much. We need to make that barrier to entry lower. We need to make people go like, here's why you're going to like TFT. And I think there are ways to do that we have ideas that are going to take time, but yeah, it's on the list. All right, here we go. There are 214 questions in queue. See, this will teach me to not pre-get. I didn't want to pre-get questions because I wanted people to feel like they could show up and ask questions. But this is not sustainable. All right. Hey, Mort, I wanted to ask you a question about utility champions. Last time you mentioned a unit like Janna or Orianna is not good because you never want to itemize them. What do you think about giving more utility champs to pick from in team building? B, with 2-cost hero augments existing, a hero augment for 4-cost utility unit, Janna ultimate burns instead of ultimate. Okay, so this is a good question. And this is a controversial one because even on the design team, when I first started going on about, hey, I don't want support champions in our set, a lot of the people on our team are like support champion fans. And it's like, you're taking away my fantasy, right? Like, people want to make heal comps. They want to make support comps. And so if I go in there and I go, hey, I never want to see a support champion again, they're like, the fuck? But the reality is, every way I've been able to slice it, what happens to support champions is, A, you never want to itemize them because the difference in output between an itemized and an unitemized support is too low, right? Like, oh, my Janna shield is double with a death cap. That's not going to win you a fight. And B, because their utility is so good and multiplicative off of the itemized champions, they become must-includes, right? Every comp in set 6 that could include Joy was the good comps because they can include the champions. And this is why things like 6 Deadeye are never good, right? Because, like, you don't need 6 ranged characters that do nothing. You need utility. And a common complaint is like, well, the 4 costs don't have enough utility. This comp doesn't have enough utility in it. Utility is very powerful on unitemized champions. And in order to increase the breadth of playable comps, we need to have as many champions that you want to put items on do well. So a pure support champion, I am still very convinced can't work. Even as you were describing, where like, what if there was a hero augment that could like replace them? Okay, sure, but that still means their support version is a must include in the comp. The way I've found that I'm happy with so far, that is a healthier version of this is that you give the champion like 70 to 80% of their output is still the typical DPS and include a small amount of utility. I think set 8 Sona is probably the healthiest version of this we've ever created. Because set 8 Sona had the heal, the stun, and the damage, but you did one itemizer with like blue buff, and it was like damage, but there was like some good utility. It was good. This is a healthy version of a support champion, and I want to see more things like that. Soraka on live is like not quite there yet. I think Soraka right now is doing too much healing and not enough damage. Itemizing Soraka right now, very often a mistake. And like it's a really tight line, but I think we have to be in that world where putting items on them makes them the carry and lets you win fights with some utility a little bit. Ashe is actually another example on live where this is going poorly, right? Do you ever put items on Ashe? No. Do you include Ashe in every Deadeye comp? Absolutely, because the utility from the AoE, attack speed slow, and from Freljord, the trait, is like bananas. So you always include Ashe. If you're playing 2 Deadeye, you include Ashe over frickin' Akshan because of that utility. And again, like, that's where we have to be. So I'm still pretty confident in this decision. Nothing's changed my mind on it. But I know it's a controversial decision because, again, I know people like the support fantasy. I do. And so we need to find versions of the support fantasy that are healthy, like Sona from set 8. What about Jace? Yeah, Jace is not a good... Like, I think Jace is in a bad spot. I think Jace is another one that, like... Do you ever put items that aren't named Zeke's on Jace? Not really. Not really. All right. Again, trying to randomly shuffle down here. Hey, Mort, do you think an augment which grants +2 from a random trait could work? I would say too high of a ceiling and too low of a floor. If you randomly hit +2 Targon, you hate yourself. And if you randomly hit +2 Piltover, you win the game. And that variance difference is probably too high. So realistically, probably not. How important do you think community TFT orgs to the game, like Aegis, unaffiliated with Riot? Is there any plans to allow orgs like these to access things like Tournament Realm or Spectator Mode? So this is a great question, and I like answering questions where sometimes my answer is I don't know, because one of the worst things, I hate people who pretend like they know everything. They're just the worst. I don't know everything. I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know. And this is a good question because, you know what? I don't know. I don't know the actual impact of community orgs like Aegis. I think it's, on a personal level, I think it's really cool what they do. I think it's really cool that we see like community events and stuff like that. But I don't know the impact. I haven't studied that enough to really understand, like, what does a game without those look like? Like, League hasn't had a lot of those in a while. Is that okay? Is that bad? What does a game with them look like? How does it look like when they're supported and funded? How important are they to the actual impact? What, like, do they actually move player numbers or not? I don't know. On a principle level, I would like to believe they are important. I would like to believe that having these tight-knit communities you can get into and really love the game are important, but I don't know that for sure, and I can't say that with confidence. So I don't know. I know for a lot of it, like, and again, I shouldn't be indexing on things Milk says. He lives rent-free in my head sometimes, but like, I know for like set 3 to set 6, they would gauge TFT's success on how many players were being signed by, you know, Liquid and Cloud9 and other orgs and stuff like that. And the answer was not many. But the answer was, did that matter? No, of course not, because our player numbers were still bananas and everything was good. So that doesn't actually matter. But again, I don't know the answer to this one. So, but as far as plans to allow these orgs to access things like Tournament Realm, I think that is like something all they have to do is reach out and ask. I couldn't tell you the exact names of the contacts, but there are contacts you can talk to on the esports side of things. So, I personally can only talk in anecdotes about this as I have no solid data on the right end of things, but between Aegis and Tactician's Crowns, it's amazing to see the level of community people can build. Yeah, and I think the other thing, obviously, is like, if you look at Smash Brothers, I think Smash Brothers shows what a community-driven game can achieve, right? Like, Smash Brothers Melee basically achieves success in spite of Nintendo, and that thing's been going some crazy. So, yeah, I don't know. So, it's a good question though. It's a really good question. I wish I had a better answer for you. Watching Ted Lasso, and I gotta say, you're my favorite character. I don't understand that reference. I haven't seen Ted Lasso. Oh, this is a short one, but it's a fun one. Because we've talked about this. Re-asking question from earlier, was there a thought to making mana re flat amount rather than percentage? It feels very strong against frontline, but weak against things like multicasters, while a flat amount would be closer to delaying cast by X time. So, we've talked about this, and we've gone back and forth on it. The answer is, it's trade-offs, right? Design is often about trade-offs, right? It's like, this is one of the things I hate that sometimes like the yappers like to do, where it's like, if there's a design trade-off where it's like you get A but lose B, they'll go, yeah, but A loses B. And it's like, well, yeah, I know. That's the trade-off. And if we take B, you lose A. Like, you don't just get to like complain, right? Like, you are just stating the trade-off. The pros and cons of the trade-off is tricky here. And right, so to your point, like you just said, if we reduce it a flat amount, yep, the low mana cost users are punished more. The high mana cost users are punished less. Yep, that's the trade-off. You've described it. Now, which one is actually better? Again, I'm not actually sure. We believe that it is supposed to be more about the high mana cost users getting slowed down, and that's why we went with 30%. The rapid fire casters are supposed to cast quicker. I feel like if you mana reaved a 100 mana champion and it went to 120, that impact is minor. Whereas if you mana reave a champion at 20 and go to 40, like, plus only delaying it by like 2 or 3 is minor. I don't know. But again, there's a world where like I don't think the other version is wrong necessarily. It's just the version we've chosen. So I don't know. That one's a hard one. Who knows? Maybe we'll test it someday. That one's a tricky one though. I still feel like it's the right call here, but this is one where, again, it's just trade-offs and it can be very subjective. So, cool. All right. Rejecting. I'm just trying to, like, randomly dive in here. Okay. Is there any plan to add some sort of bot mode to TFT? I have friends who have taken a look at TFT but found it too daunting. I know that in the past you've said you don't want a sandbox mode because players will optimize the fun of the game, but does this preclude a very beginner-friendly mode I can use to tempt friends with? So again, this is kind of a repeat to the earlier question, but new player acquisition, making that barrier go down, I think is important. I think bots are one way we could achieve that. Bots are definitely something that has come up in the past. You know, if that ends up being a way we could do it, great. If not, we'll see. But it is something we definitely need to work on, as I mentioned. So we want people who might like TFT to be able to discover how TFT could work. So there's enough bots in my diamond lobbies. Okay. Bravo. That's a good clap back. I mean, again, if you listen to people like Milk, it's like these bots in this tournament. What was it? I think it was Setsuko who on day 1 of Worlds was like, regionals was harder or something. Like, I don't know. These trolls, man. Can't call everyone bots and then be like, why is the community so toxic? Again, I'm just trying to like jump through here. Would you consider in some parts of the game to have champion anvils like item anvils? Yes. I think the only thing, honestly, that makes me like afraid to consider this, because I kind of like this idea, but we don't want the game to turn into a giant system of like everything you do being pick one of 3, pick one of 3, pick one of 3. Anvils are already a lot. Like, I know early, like with this set, we took the anvil out of the 4-6 PvE round because we're just like, that's just another anvil choice. But yeah, like someone just said, discover everything. Yeah, like I don't want the game to devolve into discover everything. I think that would be my biggest preclusion of it. But like, for example, the new Bard augment, right? Like the old version was at level 6, get a random 3-star, random 2-star 3 cost. Had that instead been some sort of like 2-star 3 cost anvil where you could pick from one of 4, would it have been a more popular augment? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, like, I'm not even saying it's a bad idea. That's just my hesitation with pursuing something like that. So, I don't think everything has to be... And then the other thing is, with set 5, when we first introduced armories, we did go a little ham with the number of armories that appeared. And that did lead to sort of everyone getting their best in slot. So I think we have to be careful about just letting everything be an armory. But again, would I shoot that idea? If a designer came to me with that idea and was like, here's a great reason to do it, would I shoot it down? No, I don't think I would. I think there are ways to do a champion armory that could work. Howdy Mort, why is placement randomized when 2 players die with the same negative health and not the person that lasted longer gets the highest placement? So you're actually a little misinformed there. It is not random. We have a tiebreaker system in place. I might get this wrong off the top of my head, so bear with me. But I believe the tiebreaker is whoever had more health previously, that person wins. And then if that's tied, it's who won a round most recently. So it is definitely not random. And it is definitely not... the reason it's not the person who lasted longer, though, is that actually is how it was all the way back in set 1 and 2. And in set 1 and 2, we had this problem we had this problem where like there was a pay-to-win map, the one that Soju uses, the Freljord one, where you would run away, and it was like really weird and really stupid. So we don't want there to be pay-to-win in the game. Someone just said, what if both of those are tied? The likeliness that 2 players recently won a round the same time and had the same... Like, that is so unlikely. In that event, I believe it is random. There might even be another tiebreaker after that, I forget. But... The likeliness that is the case is so unlikely. It's not even funny how unlikely that is. Like, I'd be willing to bet we have not had a game in all of the game play out that way in all of live this patch. So. At what point is interest calculated? It's right at the start of the next round. Right at the start of the next round. As soon as the game says it's 4-1, calculate. So if you do anything up before that action, you're good to go. All right. Here's a good one. Any plans on nerfing forced best in slot for units, i.e. making bow items give 8 to 12 AS instead of fixed 10%? So this is a good question. We've been making changes throughout the entire game's history to try to reduce the best in slot problem, right? The difference between a Deathblade, an IE, and a Giant Slayer on Aphelios is pretty minimal. It's pretty minimal. It's pretty contextual. It didn't used to be the case. It used to be there was a very clear best in slot. And anytime there is a best in slot, we usually try to address it. For example, Hurricane is very clearly best in slot on Akshan right now, and we're addressing it next patch by nerfing that interaction. Now, that being said, are we perfect yet? No, we're definitely not. I think a great example of this is, have you played Aphelios without Ginsu's? It's not great. Have you played Belveth without RFC? Not so great. We still have work to do. I don't think having it be a variant number based on who's wearing the item is the way to solve that. Part of this might just be certain items are unhealthy. Like Ginsu's in particular is one of the examples where like there are champions that work well with Ginsu's and there are champions that don't. Whereas like Deathblade is like pretty clear. The easiest way to solve this as a designer, like let's say someone came to me and said, Mort, you have to solve this or you're fired. It's homogenizing the items, right? If every item becomes very similar, then the difference between the items is minimal. But homogenized items end up being very less fun. It's just less fun if Deathblade is the same as IE is the same as Giant Slayer. It's just less fun. And Ginsu's in particular, even when the item is not that strong, is the most built item by far. It is a fun item. Players love building Ginsu's. If anything, we need more items that are fun like Ginsu's. And so, yeah, we need it, finding that balance between what's fun and interesting, but doesn't have the best in slot problem. That's a tricky thing. We'll keep at it. So I think this, in particular, this set, we made too many champions that are very reliant on attack speed. I also think we're just short on attack speed items. How many good attack speed items are there? Ginsu's, RFC. That's it? 2? Maybe we need more. I don't know. Maybe this is a problem we should solve in the immediate future. Okay. What was your favorite set? Set 6 or set 9? Set 9 is too early to say is my favorite, but set 6 is my old favorite. What are your best to worst economy traits, and what are your thoughts on Piltover this set? Okay, I can just answer this. Okay, best to worst economy traits. I'll do this quick. The best ones I think are Mercenary and Underground, for different reasons. I think Mercenary is the best version of the risk-reward loss streak trait we've ever built. It showed you what you were getting. You had key moments where you could like cash out. It's like, oh, I just rolled a tome. Time to try to cash out. Great. I think Underground was also good because Underground had this like, you weren't doomed. You couldn't just screw yourself out of it. You could like, you know, play loss streak Underground, but win a couple rounds and still try to cash out. And I think Underground was good too. And I'll be honest, I still love the moments, even though the challenger players will rage about it. But the moments where it's like, okay, I'm going for my third Underground cash out. And then I see Morello, Sunfire. No, you know, and you have to like push further. Because even when we first announced it, we were like, sometimes it's not the cash out you want. And it's like, yeah, that's the idea. You have to take, like, I think Underground was fun. I think the worst versions, Draconic was probably really, really just like the lamest version of like, get a random egg. Sometimes it's big, 'cause reasons. And it just 3 stars Zyra over and over. Woo! Like, I don't know. I think Draconic was pretty rough. What are my thoughts on Piltover this set? I think Piltover was another case of us. Oh, grats on Golden Squink. Sorry. I know I said I wouldn't pay attention to that, but grats. I think Piltover was another case of me overestimating people's ability to want to make decisions. I think the idea that you have to choose between this cool T-Hex or a bunch of cool stuff, even if the tooltip, like we talked about, what if the tooltip literally said what you were going to get, right? Instead of it saying 150 gold, it said 4 Radiant items, 2 Tactician's Crowns, and 20 gold or whatever. The fact that you have to think and go, do I want this T-Hex or do I want this? And you have to contextualize and make a tough decision. And your brain's like, I don't know. And you get like decision paralysis and you're like, I don't want to make this decision. And because of that, you just end up sitting there with the T-Hex all the time. And if you sit there with the T-Hex all the time, then you don't get the cool transitions and stuff like that. And so I think having people have to choose between A or B was a mistake. Just like an absolute mistake. I should have caught that sooner. But that's also why I think we're going to rework it to remove that choice. I think we're going to simplify it. I think the T-Hex is fun, but again, I think having to give up a T-Hex to get cool rewards isn't fun. So I think the simpler version is just lost streak and get cool stuff. Simple is good. Simple is good. So, yeah. Cool. All right. Again, we're at 30 minutes ago. I'm just, again, trying to randomly go through here. If you were to quit as a TFT dev tomorrow, would you pursue streaming or pursue TFT as a player, ladder, competitions, etc.? How far do you see yourself going in both things? So I've talked about this a little bit briefly. I like streaming as a hobby. I think it's very fun. I like getting to talk to players. I like getting to stream a bunch. Would I pursue streaming as a career? Not in a million years. I can take about 20 to 30 hours of this, and then I would go mad. Trying to do this as much as like Soju does, no way. I would lose my temper. I would become grouchy and irritable. There's just no way. I can't do it that long. I also think it's a great way to burn out on things you're passionate about. One of the important things in life is to like keep your hobbies and your job separate. When your hobby becomes your job, like who was that streamer? Like Ludwig was talking about some streamer, I don't know their name, but they were like, I used to play games to escape life, and now I go to life to escape playing games, because he was doing it so much. Like, I don't want to ever devolve into that. And so I would never stream full time. The other thing I'll call out is that I'm kind of entertaining, and I'm kind of funny and kind of witty, but like, am I the best content creator out there? No, not even close. I think a large part of my appeal is I'm a game dev, and you get to talk to a game dev. And so I think if I was not a game dev, would you watch me over someone like Asmongold? No, Asmongold's just funnier. He's a funnier guy. So I don't know. I think I would fall off pretty hard. And I think we've seen this a lot, right? A lot of people who are like, I'm going to go be a streamer. They're like big for like a year, and then they fall off hard, and then they go back into dev. So I don't know. I like it being a hobby. I also just like making video games. Making video games is fun. Would I ever see myself playing TFT as a competitive player? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've talked about this before. I may know the most about the TFT as a whole, but am I the best player? Not even close. Not even close. Maybe top 1,000? Maybe? Although at this point, I'm not even the best player on the team, because now we have a Nico and now we have Truxie, both of which are currently better players than I am. So the difference between me and Nico, though, is like Nico refines his skill and becomes better. My ability is I look at a new thing and I go, here's how it works, right? Like, that's why I'm a designer and Nico's a skilled player, you know, like there's a difference. I just don't think my skill set is suited to be a competitive player. The other thing is, like, even when I played Smash sort of like half competitively, I'm too much of an explorer. Like, when I played Smash, I would play random. I wanted to play every character. I don't have, you know how like the speedrunners, or the, what do we call it? The honers, right? Like, they would just do the same thing over and over and over. Like, I won't go into a fighting game and lab. I can't. Boring. I don't have the patience to lab like that. And so I just don't think I don't think I have what it takes to be the SSS tier. So yeah, this is why I couldn't be a speedrunner. I'm not going to play Mega Man X 118 times in a week. Like, no thank you. No, thank you. All right. All right. Again, just trying to randomly pick here. We're at 30 minutes ago, so if you ask your question more recently than 30 minutes ago, that's why you haven't seen it. Hey Mort, I've been playing since set 5. I love this game so much, especially spatulas. I remember before augment spats are a simple and fun way to create a that won't ever see that game again situation. What goes into the set design decision to determine what spats you can make? Is there any chance we can have a set where a component can make more than one spat, sort of like Armory? So right now we sort of do what I'll just call the default, right? Is like a new set has 20 traits. We have 8 spats. We go which 8 match best. And the thing we're looking for is which ones aren't boring, which ones kind of match. So like Challenger being bow makes sense. It's attack speed. And Challenger being transformative, yeah, it's cool to see some random champ you normally don't see dash around. Good job. That being said, we screw it up sometimes. I think there's a really big screw up right now, which is Demacia. Demacia equal cloak, anti-magic? Makes sense. Demacia being transformative? No. In fact, putting a Demacia emblem on a champion is terrible. You never want to put it, like, you're like, just go over here, emblem, and be a +1. That is a bad example of a spatula. We screwed that up. So that should have been one of the uncraftable ones. But stuff like that is usually what it comes into. We're trying to make whatever's good for that. Yeah, someone said Ionia. Like, Ionia is great, right? Like, a bunch of attack speed. Cool. But yeah. Now, is there a chance where we can have a set where a component can make more than one spat? Probably not. Again, that goes back to, like, adding an armory for armory's sake. Probably not. More decisions around that. I think sticking to some are common and some are rare, I think, is a better version. So, yeah. Alrighty. Let's see. Here's a good one. I don't know. Hey, Mort, I was wondering why you and the team don't do more in-depth explanations on champs and their abilities. I'm specifically talking about how Ari the set and how there's debate on how she's played best, but also going back to older sets where a champion was intended by design to be niche. I mean, part of this is like the sense of discovery, right? Like, I think it'd be weird if like if we came out and go, hey, here's the game, and here's every way we intend for you to play it. And if you don't play it like this, you're breaking what we were intending. That's kind of weird, right? Like, I think the better version of this is, here's a sandbox of champions and traits and items, and here's kind of what we're thinking of how you play it. But, like, you'll figure some cooler stuff out. And sometimes people figure out some cooler stuff, and it's fun. And I think taking all the mystery out of it would be less exciting, right? Like, again, there's this intention to, like, optimize the fun out of a game. But I think it's more fun if letting players figure it all out. And the real talk is, like, sometimes we get it wrong, right? You know, what was it? Like, probably the biggest ones are, like, there are champions we intend to play with blue buff, and then very quickly it is discovered, no, don't give them blue buff. If you're blue buffing your karma right now, you're an idiot. Don't blue buff your karma. You know, and, like, people who get to discover that get to kind of, like, enjoy that discovery and excitement. So I don't know. I really don't think there's a world, and that's why I feel like my rundowns are, like, probably the best you're gonna get, right? When we first release a set and I do those PvE rundowns, it's like, here's kind of what we're thinking, but, like, you'll figure it out. Have fun. I think that's probably the best you're gonna get. I think something like this Q&A stream is also, you know, where you can get more in depth of that. But the reality is the people that really want to know exactly what Giovanni was thinking when he made Rise 4 is pretty low. See, now chat's going, wait, blue buff on Karma's bad? Yes, if you ask the challenger players, blue buff on Karma's bad. So, great example. Great example. So, okay. Continuing on. Sorry, this one's a little cliche, but for all the new people here, I'm going to answer this one. Also, my song is ending, so I have to change songs. All right. Cool. All right, so this one's a little cliche, but hey, Mort, can you tell your story as a game designer? Do you have any advice for the aspiring one like me? So I'll try to do this quick because I know a bunch of you have heard this before. But my story is about as typical as it gets. It's pretty dull, actually. I grew up playing video games. My mom and grandma got me an NES and TV when I was like 5. I became addicted. I played video games every chance I could. Video games were everything to me. Video games. When I couldn't play video games, I would read my Nintendo Power strategy guides. So, like, when I wasn't playing games because my parents wouldn't let me, I would read about video games and I would learn about, like, man, Nintendo Power was the best. I loved Nintendo Power. All the strategy guides. I actually think some of the old Nintendo strategy guides are great for level design because you would get those, like, 3D renders of all the levels. And so you'd get to see, like, how their level design worked and stuff like that. Or one of my favorites is the Mario 3 guide, where you get to see all the different patterns for the card game. And so you would, like, understand how everything worked. I loved the strategy guides for learning how games worked. So I did that growing up. High school, I would do things like, we played Magic the Gathering, but you had a calculator on the side that would pick a random number 1 to 200, and we had a sheet of paper that would, like, okay, you rolled 168, well, that one says draw a card and discard a card. Cool. You rolled 92, that one says gain 3 health. So, like, it was like random Magic the Gathering. So we'd, like, make our own games and stuff like that. And so, like, you were kind of, like, making your games as you grew up. And so I knew I wanted to make games. Graduate high school, went to college at University of Washington, and realized they didn't have anything that was going to get me into game degrees other than their engineering degree, which was kind of crap at the time. And math teacher, they didn't even have a teaching thing at UW at the time. So I actually dropped out, went back to McDonald's. I'd been working at McDonald's for 2 years, worked at McDonald's for another year, found the school DigiPen. DigiPen was like a video game school, but they only had programming at the time. So I'm like, well, it'll get me in the industry, so I'll try it. I hate programming. It's like learning a foreign language, which I guess I'm not good at. So I'm not a big programmer. I was good at debugging. I'm good at debugging people's code, but I'm not good at writing code. And yeah, someone just said DigiPen's expensive. When I went, it wasn't as bad. My student loan for 4 years was $80,000. I hear it's way worse now. Sorry. But because I did have to pay my own way. I didn't have rich parents or anything like that. But then I basically got a really big breakthrough. I got a really big breakthrough, which was my sophomore year at DigiPen. Nintendo, NST next door, opened up an internship. And they only do this once every like 4 or 5 years. The problem was they said you had to be a junior or senior to apply for the internship. And I was a sophomore. I'm like, no, you have to let me try. You have to let me try. I went in to the I forget which teacher or whatever, and I'm like, you have to let me apply. I beg you. And they're like, okay, you're not going to get it, but go ahead. So I applied. I did it. I became one of the final 8 people they picked. And then what happened was they had a level design competition using Mario vs. Donkey Kong 1. So I got to do that level design competition. I did that. I handled myself very well and professional and very calm. And my future boss at the time ended up really liking how I handled myself. So I was one of the 2 chosen. So I got an internship at Nintendo in my sophomore year in college, which, again, very fortunate, very lucky. And that's why when people ask for advice, I'm like, oh yeah, just get an internship at Nintendo in your sophomore year. Like, it's not really the best advice. So I know that, and I know I don't get to, it kind of high roll. So, but the thing I will say that is advice is one of the reasons I was chosen was like, I had a deep knowledge of Nintendo games. I'd studied the games NST made beforehand when I interviewed. So like they were asking me questions about like Wave Race and I could answer them. And so if you're going to apply to a company, knowing a lot about their games does help. It shows you did your homework. Then from there, my work ethic kind of carried me. When you're an intern and you make 20 levels on your first day, you're a hard worker. And so the other big thing was I learned a lot. I was a sponge. I absorbed a lot. So, and yeah, then from there, it was just 10 years at Nintendo working my way up. I made 6 Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. By the time I left, I was the game director. My name was the first name in the credits in 3 games, which is really cool. And then they were like, we want you to make a 7th Mario vs. Donkey Kong. And I'm like, I need to do something else. I applied to one company, which was Riot Games. Riot barely hired me. I barely got in the door. I almost didn't make it in. Which is funny because I went from game director all the way down to designer. But they quickly saw the error and corrected it, and so I've been doing Riot ever since. So that's the short version. As far as advice, good work ethic, and again, try to learn a lot. And like I said, the reason I highlighted the thing about Magic the Gathering when I was like making games, like make games. For me, the thing I was doing there was like making variations of Magic the Gathering, right? And like I got that player loop feedback where we would like make a variation of this Magic the Gathering thing, then we would play it, and we'd be like, oh, this one said when you roll, discard your hand, and we're like, that's fucking dumb. So we deleted it, and like I got into that iteration, loop, and like even just that got me practicing game design. So something as simple as that, where a variation of Magic the Gathering is very helpful. So there you go. That's the fast version. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Does the league team ever rant at you when the set launches and PBE gets locked for league players as well? No. We usually plan... Yeah, take it easy, casual. We usually plan well for like a league downtime. Like, could you imagine if we were launching a new set while they were trying to do arena at the same time? Like, that would just be really bad. That'd be bad planning. So usually when we're launching a set, there isn't too much going on in the league situation, and they just kind of accept it. So I wouldn't say there's rant. The teams work really well together. So, okay, trying to get to questions. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one. Again, if you're getting refunded, I'm just trying to be fair and random here. Although I admit bias in picking this question. How much of a challenge for the TFT team will it be to keep the game feel fresh in future sets as we continue to exhaust different variations of existing champions as units? Is this a major concern? Yes, this is a concern. It's actually the number one thing that keeps me up at night, and probably the number one thing I will be working on in the future. I believe we have done a great job up until now using the different ways of the champions, using the different systems and things like that. But I think moving forward, we can't really just lean on that. Let's say, this is a bad example, but let's say set 15 was just new champs, new traits, new augments, new portals, because for whatever reason we decided to make that permanent. Again, I'm making this up, but like, and a slight variation on some new items. I think at that point, people are bored of that. I actually think just new champs and traits aren't enough anymore. I think in order to keep TFT permanent for like another 5 years, we're going to need big swings. We're going to need some bigger swings and some bigger risks and some bigger weird things. The interesting thing here is we're the number one auto battler. Most of the other battlers have died, so we don't really have anyone we can like learn from. But there is one game that we look to as like a, how did you do it for so long? And the answer is Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering has been around for, 20, 30 years now, way too long. And I definitely think there were parts in Magic the Gathering's career where it was like, okay, they've been making cards for 10 years. How many more cards can they make? How many more different types of things can they make? And I know they've had their ups and downs, and like they've had sets that were terrible. They've had weird things they tried that didn't work, but they're still around for a long time. And I think we have to look at that and kind of go, what's TFT's variation of that, right? Like, what do we do on our 10-year set to keep the set interesting? What do we do on our 20-year set? What are we doing that's keeping people excited to play? And so here come what are the weird things. Someone says, here come foils. Well, I'm thinking less about monetization, and I'm thinking more about gameplay. I think foils were a good monetization improvement, but I don't know that I would help have that fix things. So obviously I'm not going to spoil anything that's on my mind here, but I think it is literally TFT's number one problem in the like medium term. If 2 years from now all we did was new sets, new mechanics, I think we lose a lot of our momentum. I think we have to... The way I've been describing it is, it has to be an idea that someone hears in one sentence and they go, oh, I gotta try that. I gotta try that. That sounds cool. That sounds weird. I gotta try that. We need something like that. It can't be this like really deep, complex mechanic that's like Portals was for this set. Yeah, kind of. But yeah, it is a concern, but I think it's something we want to work on. So there you go. All right, again, just randomly picking one here. Where are we at time-wise? I got a little more than 2 hours. I got to end right at 11, so we're going right till 11. Have you and the team ever considered having 6 augment choices on 2-1, 3-2, 4-2? For example, top row can be 3 combat utility options, and bottom 3 options can be economy-based choices. Rerolls might need to be changed to compensate for 6 choices, but I feel like it would be a great choice in do I want to build strong board or economic board. So there's 2 things here. The first is, I mean, we kind of already have 6 choices, right? 3 plus rerolls. But when I look at a question like this, decision paralysis is a big thing, right? If I offer you pick one of 10, your brain gets fried. If I offer you pick one of 3, your brain can digest it. And especially with our augments, I feel like showing 6 things on screen is too much. It's too much. It'll overload players a lot. The other thing as you're describing it is like top row, 3 combat utility, bottom 3 options. Again, we learned this with set 5 with the armories, is like if you can guarantee something every time, players will intentionally narrow their choices and sort of force the same thing over and over. We would rather get you to have some of these random situations that force you into something you're less comfortable with. You know, I want you sometimes playing with an economy augment and then sometimes playing with a combat augment. I don't want you to every game go in going, okay, I'm going to pick the combat augment first and then the economy, like whatever. Like, I want you to have to deal and adapt to what you're being given. And again, that goes back to that design principle we talked about earlier, which is that TFT should be a game about a bunch of different unique things happening. That many choices, I think, narrows that down a bit too much. We've already narrowed it to some extent, but overall, I would say I'm pretty against an idea like this. What do you think? What would you think about a Nico legend that randomly chooses a different legend for your tailored augments? What I'll say is, literally, Nico was in the original design doc for legends. I wanted it very badly. We couldn't get it done in time. It's still on the backlog. I'll just even say this one. Like, random legend was something I especially wanted as a player. Like, on my stream, I probably would have played Nico every game. So if you ever think we make decisions based around my stream, this is one time where I got shafted, man. I wanted it. But we couldn't get to it in time. So I wanted it so bad. I just picked Nico every game. Isn't that just Poro? No. Poro is random augments. Nico is like, okay, this game you are Aurelian Soul. This game you are Ornn. And that would have been fun. It would have been a great way to test random legends. All right. One more, and then I'll do another skip batch. Mort, what is your current thought on chase traits? Some of my fondest moments in TFT was hitting Woodland. I feel like that moment is lost with 9 Ionia and similar. I feel like it's harder to feel the impact of these. Do you think I'm just an old jaded TFT player or is something there? No, I think it's a mix. I think augments and Tome of Traits have had the trade-off / side effect of chase traits are easier to achieve now and we can't put as much power in them, right? 6 Woodland required you to get to a point where you saw literally Woodland Lux, like 1 of 10 Luxes while playing Woodland. And so we could power that up so much because it was so rare. But as things become more common, we can't bloat the power as much. And so, you know, you look at something like 9 Ionia, all you really need is 1 emblem in level 9? You know, so you can't put that much power into it. We've really screwed this up before when Ionia Heart existed, right? Because then you could just do it on level 8, which meant it wasn't rare at all, which meant the power had to come down. So I think right now what we need to do is we've been slowly dialing this back, right? The removal of Ionia Heart, Demacia Heart, Noxus Heart has allowed us to keep those rarer and make them more powerful. It is important that we still have those big chase traits with big payoffs right now. And I think that's actually one of the areas we can still improve, right? Like, is 9 Noxus really that exciting of a payoff right now? I don't think so. I actually think we should be buffing 9 Noxes. I just don't think the payoff is worth the difficulty in getting it right now. Jade 12 was funny as hell. Yeah, Jade 12 is a good example. But I think we need to have those really high payoffs, those really high chase traits, but they have to be rare enough, and augments and tomes have made them less rare, so the power hasn't been able to inflate. So that's the thing I think we have to keep an eye on. And so finding opportunities to make more of these really, really rare things, I think is the way to go. Okay, again, skipping. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep myself at 30 minutes. And then that way you have to stick around when you ask a question for 30 minutes. It seems like the only fair way. All right, here we go. 30 minutes ago. Someone asked this question 30 minutes ago. Here we go. I've been playing since set 1 and absolutely love the game. Has your team given any thought to how to make it less punishing to force comps and get super contested? I feel like every set is mostly just searching for a carry, and you win or lose based on how lucky you were. Flexibility ends up making me feel like an RNG bot playing slot machine solving variables and isn't too fun. So there's some mixed things in here. Obviously, I don't know that I agree with every set being a slot machine or anything like that. I think we've seen with the competitive ladder that skill definitely matters and the ability, but there is something here I think is key, right? And like the difference between playing Zed reroll uncontested and contested is massive, right? It's very, very big. I don't think our systems are perfect. I think the impact of being contested is probably too great in certain comps. I don't get me wrong, I don't think we want to go to a world where 4 people can play reroll Zed. That's probably incorrect, because the whole thing is that the champion pool is supposed to reward you for flexing out of a contested comp and do well. The problem is, though, we have systems in place that are actually doing the opposite. One of the things I hate in the game right now is that if player A is playing Zed reroll and player B is playing, I'm trying to think of another 2-cost right now, Jinx reroll, and player 3 is playing Warwick reroll, should I play Aphelios or should I play a Soraka reroll? And the answer is Soraka reroll by a large margin, right? Like staying in the 2-cost bucket while a bunch of other people are playing 2-cost is way better right now. That is really, really bad, because what happens is as soon as it becomes a little bit of a reroll meta, everyone rerolls. As soon as it becomes a 4-cost meta, everyone 4-costs. That, I think, is one of the bigger problems we need to solve, because ignoring the current reality, right? The best case scenario of TFT is I see a bunch of players doing a thing, I choose to do a different thing, and am rewarded for my observational skills, seeing that you did this, so I did this, and I was rewarded. That's best case scenario of TFT. The good news is I think one of our designers had a pretty cool idea on how to solve this. We need to test it, and we need to make sure it actually works. But I think there are definitely ways to improve this and ways to go that I think that we can work on. So, okay, here's a spicy question, but actually good for context. When are you bringing Locket out of the Shadow Realm? Well, I mean, so it's going out of the Shadow Realm and into the recycle bin next patch. It should be less bad next patch, so you'll be able to play it more often next patch, which is good. Will it be an S tier item that you'll be slamming? No. I think... trying to think of how to do this without spoiling. I think there have been some clear things in the item system that need some improvement. And the good news is they are not far in the backlog. So, but in particular, I think an item like Locket, the big thing I really missed with Locket is just how well it synergizes with Bastion. Like, if you put a Locket on a Cho'Gath, you're an idiot. If you put a Locket on a 4 Bastion comp, you're getting a ton of value. And that's probably not okay. Remember, we were talking about the best in slot problem. That was something that shouldn't be okay. So, yeah. But TLDR, we've got some plans on how to address stuff like this in the future, and not long future. So, yeah. Should be good, though. But I agree, the way we had to, like, push Locket into the Shadow Realm to solve this problem was not ideal. Was not ideal. All right. Again, going to the 30-minute thing. Again, if your question gets skipped, it's not personal. It's not personal. There are like 100 in the log right now. Although we got the log down. Nice. Okay. Paste. Is there a reason so many potential frontline 3-cost this set are closer to carries instead? Bruiser and Juggernaut 3-cost not being great frontline, and Taric early on being kind of bad makes it really hard to stabilize in time. Agree. I actually think this is one of the bigger flaws of the set. The good news is the Taric problem will be fixed next patch. I know a lot of people are worried we fixed it too well, but Taric should be a very, very good... Taric should be a great 3-cost tank next patch. If you get a Taric too early, you're going to be fine. Will it be too strong? We'll see. Fingers crossed, no. But yes, I do think it's kind of weird because when we look at like the best optimal structure for tanks, what we find is 1-cost tanks are great for setting up an initial board. 2-cost tanks are an okay spike. And 4-cost tanks are great for endgame. 3-cost tanks, though, end up in this awkward spot where, like, you hit them at 2-1, you feel bad because they're worse. Like, even at balance, is a Taric 1 better than a Maokai 2? No. So you don't play them in the early game. So you hit them on, like, stage 3, but then is a Taric 2 better than a Sedge 1? Yeah, but, like, not by a lot, and Taric's gonna end up, or Sedge is going to end up on your board later. So 3-cost tanks kind of end up in a weird spot. Even someone like Alistar, right? Like Alistar last set was basically a trait bot. No one really played him as a tank. And yeah, Sedge 1 is much cheaper, right? Sedge 1 is 4 gold for similar tank value compared to a Taric 2, which is 9 gold. That's a great point. So, yeah. It's a weird spot. I do think, like, one of the things we talked about that even I know Nico's not super thrilled with as a player is, like, Garen and Darius both being Juggernaut, but also both being damage dealers, means Juggernaut doesn't really have a strong front line either. So I think that was kind of awkward. Yeah, it's tricky. So Nasus, well, I mean, Nasus is a 4-cost, right? So sorry, voice is starting to give out a little bit. Okay. Would you consider something like when you hit 60 stacks, get 2 Tactician's Crown, and force the selling of the T-Hex for a change? I wouldn't consider that exact change, but I think, again, trying to simplify that is the way to go. So, excuse me. Okay. All right. Curie cleared out a bunch, so I'm mostly caught up. Oh, here's an interesting one that I'm gonna try to answer, but I might give you a terrible answer. We'll see. We'll see how I do. You're asking a 40-year-old this question. How do I find a girlfriend/life partner as a gamer? Any advice from experience? This one's tricky. But here's what I'm going to tell you. Step 1, don't look for a girlfriend life partner. If you're looking for it, you're going to fail. You have to let it happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And oftentimes when people are looking for it, you come across as like desperate. Instead, you kind of just do your own thing. The other thing is self-confidence. Finding a way to move through your life and accomplish the things you want to accomplish is the right way to go. For example, corny, I know, but when I found my wife, I was going to school, working at Nintendo, and leading a WoW guild as a raid leader. And like those things all helped me be confident. And with that confidence, I became attractive to somebody. What's up? Oh, speaking of, like, I'm literally talking about my wife, and here she is. What's up? You're just listening? Oh, okay. Anyway, so now she's just sitting here. Now you can see I'm turning red, trying to do this in front of my wife. Anyway, being confident is attractive in and of itself, and so that's kind of the thing. And then it'll come to you from there, right? And so get out there, do what you like, be confident about it, be friendly. I mean, that's the other thing. Like the basic stuff I shouldn't have to say, right? Like, yeah, like shower, duh. Have well hygiene, all good. But, you know, just treat other people with kindness. That's the other one. Like, people just want to be treated as human beings, as each other, right? Don't go up to somebody looking to them as a potential mate. Look at them as a person and be like, hey, how's it going? What do you want to talk about? You know, let's be friendly, and things will happen from there. So yeah, it's kind of how you approach life, with confidence and happiness. So cool. Did you need something, or are you just here to glare at me while I answer that question?
I was in it for the WoW loot.
Okay, my wife said she was in it for the WoW loot. Nice.
Hey, I got ancient drops.
Nice. She got ancient drops. Perfect. So sweet.
Better than legendary. You have cats at your work.
I'm sure. All right, let's keep going. Do you think it'd be viable for TFT to create a system where you could custom design scenarios where your opponent has a set board and you have limited resources and the goal is to win a fight using correct units? Puzzle mode. And on the other hand, you could solve other player scenarios. So puzzle, okay. So I like this question for two reasons. One, I worked on Mario vs. Donkey Kong for 10 years, and Mario vs. Donkey Kong's big thing was a level editor where you would make your own levels and puzzles to solve. So I have 10 years experience in UGC puzzle making. I have spent so much time of my design career in UGC puzzle making. I could tell you many horror stories of UGC puzzle making. For example, let's say we made this thing. The first thing someone would do would be shape out using probably Cho'Gaths in the shape of a dick. There'd be an arrangement of Cho'Gaths, and it would be the purple Wang. That would be the first and most popular level. That's just how UGC goes. People make dicks, and they get upvoted because it's UGC. But the second thing is that puzzle games have a very, very short life. What is UGC? Sorry, user-generated content. User-generated content. Anyway, sorry, I was reading a stupid chat thing. Didn't want to read that. Anyway, puzzle games have a very, very short shelf life. I think Hearthstone actually did this, right? And it's like you make a puzzle mode, you work really hard to design all these puzzles. Doesn't Fight for the Golden Spatula have it? Yeah, they do. But here's what happens. Players play them, they beat them, and 2 days later, no one's playing puzzle mode. Puzzles have such a short shelf life. And so the investment versus the return on puzzles are very, very low. And so realistically, would we ever make something like this? I doubt it. I just don't think it has the shelf life or replayability. I think there are better things to do now. It's not to say we'd never do it, but again, it feels like of all the things we could be doing to deliver player value, that feels like a small one. Though purple Cho'Gath Wang level, maybe I'll convince Peter. Haha. When you started working on TFT, did you envision yourself becoming the face of the game? So the answer to this is no. No. Not even close. I never thought it would get to this level. I never thought I would get recognized in public. Most recently, by the way, I was in the Jack in the Box drive-thru, and someone went, "Are you Mortdog?" I never thought that would happen. I'm grateful that it did, and I'm grateful that this unique opportunity. But again, the thing that keeps me in this space is it's so important to never let it go to my head and to never forget that there's a team behind me. One of the things that I love that there are famous game designers out there. I do. I think famous game designers are good for the industry. I think famous game designers that get credit for all the work are bad for the industry. And so Kojima being an example of is Kojima solely responsible for Metal Gear Solid? No, of course not, right? A bunch of really good people worked on Metal Gear Solid and made it great. So I don't like that. I'm happy to be a face, and I'm happy to do that. I like being a shield for my team. If people are mad, it's my fault. If we did good, it's not my fault, right? Like, set 9 is great because Kent and Sam and the artists and the engineers and designers all worked really well, and they made set 9 great. If set 9 had been a failure, it would have been my fault for approving the decisions. That's how good leadership works, right? You give credit to the good and you take blame for the bad. That's just leadership 101. And so I want to the only way this continues to work and is beneficial for both TFT and Riot is if I stay humble and I stay real about I'm just one person on a team. And the other thing I'll call out is that I learned this at Nintendo. Even at Nintendo, right, when I was the game director, leading a bunch of stuff, doing a bunch of things, I felt irreplaceable and I was letting it go to my head a little. But when I left, nothing happens, right? Like, everything goes on, right? No one's irreplaceable. No matter how good a designer you are or how smart you are or good of a leader are, no one is irreplaceable. And it's important to realize that because, you know, it'll give you perspective, right? If Riot wanted to fire me today, they could, and TFT would go on. It'd be fine. I'm not that important. Steve Jobs, I mean, even someone like Steve Jobs, right? Like, Apple's going on. Are they as good? Maybe not, but like, I don't know. Oh, darn, they're only a $4 billion company instead of an $8 billion. I don't know, whatever. Like, they're doing just fine, you know? No one's irreplaceable, so I don't know. So I'm just going to keep, my stance is I'm going to keep doing what I do, but I'm going to keep reminding everyone that it's a team effort. I'm just one person on a very good team. I've got people above me that are better. I've got people below me that are better. We're a team making a great game. That's all that matters. So, all right. Hey, I recognize this person. This person is the TFT caster who has placed the highest in a tournament. This is esports law. What do you think is the ceiling for TFT as an esport? So, this one's tricky. I still feel this way and have felt this way ever since day one, is that the best comparison to TFT is World Series of Poker, not esports, right? Like, TFT should be a game that, like, I'm a big TFT fan, or like Friday Night Magic's another good one, right? Where it's like, I'm a TFT fan, so I go to my local whatever, I enter a tournament of 64 players, and I play and I have fun. Or I go to World Series of Poker, and I enter a tournament, and if I win, I get $1 million. Like, I think that's the ceiling. The hard part, though, when you compare us to World Series of Poker, is that World Series of Poker is digestible, right? I watch a single hand of World Series of Poker, and there's ups and downs and cliffs and whatever. I don't need the whole narrative of the whole tournament. I mean, World Series of Poker just ended, yesterday? And, like, spoilers, I'm going to talk about World Series of Poker spoilers right now, so if you care, you have 60 seconds to turn it off. But anyway, there we go. So there's this hand I saw 2 or 3 days ago where it was pocket jacks versus pocket queens versus pocket kings. They all went all in. And guess what happens? The jacks win. And, you know, it's like just a crazy hand, very deep in. We're on like day 8 of the tournament or whatever. Well, that player with the jacks ended up winning the tournament. He ended up winning the whole thing. So he made a play of jacks all in versus queens and kings, won, and then wins the whole tournament. You know, but like, that's all I really know about the world. Like, I didn't watch that much of World Series of Poker, but like, that was great. TFT doesn't quite have that. So that to me is the biggest blocker, is like, how do we get people to see this event and find a way for it to be digestible and tell stories and talk about it later, right? Like, there were some stories that came out of Freljord Cup, right? Like Dish Soap turning that 8th into a 3rd, or Kurum high rolling 8 games in a row. I'm exaggerating. He didn't actually high roll that much. But I think that's the thing we have to figure out. And that's why I think the Vegas event is going to be so interesting. Because the Vegas event is finally, now that COVID's done, I know it's not actually done. That wasn't a political statement for anyone. I'm just saying, now that we can do real life events again, I think Vegas will be interesting to see what we can do with TFT. And so I'm really looking forward to the Vegas event, because I think the Vegas event will be a pivotal moment to see where we can go. I know that was actually kind of a non-answer, because like, I guess where my ceiling is World Series of Poker, but I think we're a ways off of World Series of Poker. I think that's the short version. Would you say that a Pokemon auto battler would be able to threaten TFT? I always thought that Pokemon was predestined for such a mode. So I have a bunch of thoughts here. I think Pokemon would have been a much more approachable auto battler. I think Pokemon would have been great. I think if it had been made 3 years ago, maybe. But there are two things that kind of give me confidence here. One, I think Pokemon has no interest in making an auto battler. So that helps. Two, the fact that it's now taken this long. I don't think anybody really wants that approachable an auto battler right now. We're at the point in an auto battler's life where like what people want is depth. The comparison I'll use here is like HOTS after League of Legends. HOTS was definitely more approachable than League of Legends, but at that point nobody wanted an approachable MOBA. It was too late. So I just don't think an approachable auto battler does much right now, other than possibly funnel more people into us, right? Like Pokemon auto battler comes out, people go, this is kind of neat, and then it runs out of depth, and then they go, I'm looking for more depth, and then they play TFT. I don't know. I don't think you can make a deeper auto battler than TFT, because we're already complicated beyond belief. So I don't know. I just, at this point, even if it came out today, nah, I'm not that worried. It'd be fun to make, but the Diablo 4 Path of Exile loop, I mean, to some extent, it's hard to be an incumbent in a space that, you know, has an established winner. It just is. In the game industry, once there's an established genre giant, it is hard to topple that giant. It is really hard. So, okay. Filtering. This person's name is Duck Duck Moo, so I'm gonna answer this one because that's a funny name. Being tied to the league patch cycle seems like a big limiting factor. Can that ever change, or is it just part of the landscape? Also, what about launches coinciding with holidays? So, people talk about this like it's a limitation. I don't actually think it is. I think if anything, so it's funny, when you're designing a game or you're designing a thing or solving a problem, constraints will actually help you do better, right? If I say design any game out there in the world, your brain turns to mush. You're like, anything? It could be anything? I don't know. If I say design a kart racer, your brain narrows in and you start to understand, I can approach this problem better. Designing with constraints is a good thing. Constraints help you, and I think some of the best designs come from limitations. Yeah, someone called it the white canvas problem. Yes. And I think TFT's patch cycle is a constraint that helps us do better, right? When we're creating a patch, if we could create a patch of any size, it might make us do some really silly things. I'll be honest with you. I could see us getting out of control, or like patching every day, or, you know, you could take it in the wrong turn. But I think it's like, okay, look, we have exactly 2 weeks. What is the best patch we can do in 2 weeks? I think it's healthy. I think that constraint is good. And then the other thing is, you mentioned holidays. This is where, again, I know, you know, whatever, Mort bias, whatever. I know I've said good things about Riot, but Riot is the kind of company where we prioritize players first, and then like dev health is like second or third. I don't think there's ever a world where we're like, hey, we're going to work through Christmas because it's right to patch the game. Like, who wants to work at that company? Who wants to work at a company where we're like, we're going to patch on Christmas? Not everyone is so addicted to TFT they want to spend their Christmas patching, you know? And so I think it's important that the devs get holidays. So, I don't know. Like, we plan around Christmas break, we plan around summer break, and that's important so that the devs can come back refreshed, ready to go, and deliver you great patches through the rest of the year. Someone just said clueless? I guess. If that makes me clueless, then call me an idiot. I'm happy to be an idiot there. But yeah, I think it's really important to keep dev health in mind, and I think balancing around that with those patch cycles I think is good. So honestly, even if I could snap my fingers and change the patch cycle right now, I don't think I would. I think every 2 weeks is fine. I think any more than 2 weeks is a bit too much. I think any less than 2 weeks is too slow. I don't know. I'm kind of happy with it. So. Oh, here's a good one. Hey Mort, just wondering if there are any concerns with the new layout for sets 10 and beyond with removing mid-set content. Even though the sets will be much greater in scope, do you think the possibility of the fall-off of player interest being the same as the current set could be an issue, and one that now can't be boosted fixed with mid-sets? So this is a great question. So I'm going to talk about what I can without revealing much here, because I have to be careful. But generally, the way our sets would work is this person's right? We would release a set, the sets would spike, and then over time, less and less players play, and then the mid set would happen, small spike, not as big as a full set though, small spike, and then down, 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 until the next set, right? And where that spike is and how steady it is could depend on set quality, time of year, other factors, yada yada. But without a mid set, hypothetically, if you follow that same pattern, it goes like this, but now for 4 months instead of 3, which could lead to a lower decline. That is a real concern. So what you just said is a very valid and logical concern. There are two things there, though. One, the first thing is the assumption that every set goes like this. I don't know. Set 9's doing pretty well. The second thing I'll say is that if that's true, I think there are other ways to get that later spike and that later excitement that aren't necessarily mid-sets. And so I think the team is thinking about ways to address that, and we're very aware that that is a potential problem. Nothing to announce or anything like that, but this is something we have to deal with. League of Legends has, year-long... although now they just switched to every other year. Didn't the split literally just end today or something? But, it's the kind of other thing to do. So, TLDR, I think there's ways to solve this problem, and I'm not really that concerned about it in the long term. So, all right. Again, here we go. Hello, lovely Mort. Please, can you talk about collaborating with Lore more? I would love for Lore to get the kind of publicity and popularity TFT gets. We want your scraps. And it was cool to see Lore assets appear in TFT, even art from cards that hadn't been revealed yet. All right, I'm going to take a humble brag moment, by the way. I went to that fight night thing yesterday. I have a pack of Legends of Runeterra cards. These things are sick. The fact that they even made these is amazing. And I have these, and I feel honored to have them. This is so cool. I don't know if I want to open it though. It's just so cool the way it is. And I want us to do more stuff like this. This is so cool. These are cool. Anyway, that wasn't your question though. Your question was collaborating with Lore more. I think the cool thing here is, again, I can't talk to things I'm not involved in, but the fact that we have Meddler at the top of sort of like the League games pillar and working with like Wild Rift and League of Legends and TFT and Lore, is that they can do more things collaboratively and working together. And so I think hopefully we'll get to do more stuff like that. I think using the Legends of Runeterra art for the Legends was really cool because, despite Legends of Runeterra not necessarily being as publicity or popularity, to use your words, it is a well-crafted game, man. That is a well-crafted product. The art in that game is unbelievable. So yeah, I would love to do more cool stuff with that. That'd be fun. So I hope we do more. Speaking of which, that's actually one of the reasons I'm streaming till exactly 11. I want to surprise host. I want to surprise raid the Legends of Runeterra stream. They're doing one at 11. So don't tell them though. It's a secret. Okay, next question. How has having your name associated with bad RNG in the game affected your viewpoint on the community? Is it easy to be able to kind of look past the overly negative connotation with that? The first year or so, it was rough. I got over it. Now I just laugh at it. Now, you know, people say it like, I think what finally made me get over it and just like accept it completely was the first time someone used Mortdog outside the context of TFT. The funniest one to me was there was a WoW raid or whatever. They were watching a WoW raid and one of the commentators said he just got Mortdogged. And that to me brought a smile to my face. And I don't know. If people want to use Mortdogged as bad luck, I'm okay with that. It just makes me laugh at this point. So I'm okay with it. Again, trying to just randomly pick questions here. Mods, if you see a question I absolutely should answer, by the way, even if it takes me 20 minutes to get to it, use the mod thingy, and I won't skip a mod one. What do you consider to be the limit in terms of transformative impact of augments that would be acceptable? Elaborating, transformative augments are, in my opinion, the most fun augments, but when does that fun transform the game too much? Yeah, so this is a good question, and I wish I had a, like, solid answer for you. This is something we should probably framework a little better of like what is the definition of transformative. But I think the problem is if we make a framework around it, we'll be too afraid to challenge it. And I like that we keep challenging it. The other thing I'll say is that on the team, I am often one of the more conservative people on the team. My first reaction to a lot of designs is, that's insane. Don't do that. Why would you do that? The best example here being Cruel Pact. The first time Kent proposed and made Cruel Pact, I went, no? You're insane. Level 7, 2-1? No, this is stupid. Why would we do this? This is going to break the game. But then what I often do is go, okay, if we're going to find new things that are fun, I have to give up that conservatism and like, let's try it out. Let's try it out. Let's see if it works. And I will say, Cruel Pact is still on the fence to me. I still think games where Cruel Pact exists are like, oh good, people are going to die at 4-3 because player damage is too high. And oh good, someone's like, God, the set it was in Soraka. Like, Soraka and Cruel Pact should not have existed together. But it's fun, right? Like, players are having a lot of fun with Cruel Pact, and it's one of those augments that when we did the refresh, we didn't remove because it was so fun. And so I think we have to be open to challenging that more, right? Endless Hordes is another example of this. Endless Hordes, in dev, it was... so Phil was working on this one, and it was called 100 Duck-Sized Horses. It was another one that I remember reading going, no, just no, 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 no. And even on PBE, when it was on PBE, it was broken. Clearly right now it's just ridiculously underpowered, but if we get it to a spot where it's fun, great. And I think we have to be trying to make some of these, but like you said, there's going to be some line, right? Like, here's a dumb example. I'm making this up off the top of my head. Imagine we had an augment that said, your most itemized, all your champions transformed into your most itemized champions. So if you had a Aphelios 2 with 3 items, all your champions are Aphelios, like they all clone and become 8 Aphelioses. Would I ship that augment? Probably not. Probably, but my first reaction is no. Someone just said Talia reroll. Like, yeah, like there's things that were like bad there, but like then my second reaction as a designer is we can try it. Maybe I'm wrong. And then we try it and maybe I'm wrong and it's fun, or maybe I'm right and Talia breaks the game and it was stupid, you know? And so, but it's kind of like that's how we discover new things that are good, is we have to take some risks and try some things out of our comfort zone to find the fun. So, yeah. Is this going to be recorded? Yeah, I'll upload this to YouTube when I'm done. Okay, continuing on. Let's see here. Here we go. Hey Mort, was there a reason that the legend augment always appeared right away instead of being the guaranteed last augment you rolled? Having it be a guaranteed augment that will appear should let you use it as a last choice, since having... Yeah, so this comes up a lot. The thing is, for some of our... I can't dig into it too much, unfortunately, but what I'll say is that we really wanted it to feel right away, like when you start a game, and you see your 2/1 augments, you remember, oh, I'm Ornn this game. I'm playing Ornn this game, and I wanna pick my Ornn augment and go with that. The other thing, balance-wise, it's actually nice to have a bit of a trade-off of, like, if you want to give up, one slot for that guaranteed augment. It just felt better when it shows up first. Don't get me wrong, I get it logically, right? You want to see all your other options before you look at the Ornn one. But for our intentions, it was better this way. So, yeah, it would definitely be a big nerf to Poro for sure. Don't get me wrong, like I said, I totally understand your perspective, and it's not wrong. We actually did go through a whole cycle. We did, where it was like, we tried when it was in the first one, we tried when it was in the second one, we tried where only 2-1 was in the first one, and then 3-2 and 4-2 were in the second one. Like, we tried all these various combinations. That's actually how we got to the individual augment reroll. Because when we were first testing our legend system, we were doing it with the old reroll system. So you would see 3 augments, imagine Portable Forge plus 2, and then you would hit reroll, lose Portable Forge and the other 2, and then see 3 shit ones, and you were like, ah! So then we did the whole, like, okay, well, what if it's on the second one, but then you didn't see your legend? So we went through that whole thing, but that was actually how we got to the new reroll, was to help alleviate some of that pressure. So it was like, Portable Forge, 2 I don't like, reroll the 2 I don't like, okay, Portable Forge. Great. You know, and so I think of the possibilities, that's the best one. But again, like design, like I said, it's all trade-offs, right? It's all, there are pros and cons to other systems. There are pros to the system you're describing, but there are cons, and we aren't accepting of those cons right now. This is a short one, but I can do this one. Why was there no 3 hex range champs this set? I think you mentioned something about it in the past. Yeah. So I personally believe that 3 hex range is actually like legitimately the worst range you can be. If you are a 3 hex range carry, you are now infinitely in more danger than every other 4 hex range carry. You know, nothing was worse than like your 3 item Lulu walking forward and then just dying before all your unitemized 4 range carries. Feels like crap. So I don't know. Until someone comes up with a good reason for 3 hex, I don't see why we would ever do this. I think it's 1, 2, and 4. I actually think there's no good design I've seen for a 3 hex champ. I think 1 is good because it's melee. Duh. I think 4 is good. Range. Duh. I think longer than 4 is fun occasionally. Jhin, sniper, whatever. I think 2 is good because 2 is the like backline, like the Urgots, the Bel'Veths of the world. So I think those are good. So yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, but all right, let's try this one. TFT is one of the first games I've been around from the start with, and it was cool to see some of the cosmetics become rare and prestigious. I understand why you don't want FOMO, but it does feel bad that there's nothing special for players who have been around, especially if you don't play ranked. Any plans to change that? This is a hard one. This is a hard question because, again, trade-offs, right? Like, let's say we made something like frickin' is it Black Alistar? What's the rare league skin for like beta users? I know there's the Rammus one, but Human Rise, like all those old skins, like again, trade-offs, right? Like if you have those things that no one can achieve, you feel good about having them, but if no one can achieve them, it feels hopeless, right? And like, you know, as a mount collector in WoW, as soon as you fall behind, it's like, well, then I just give up and I don't play anymore. Is it really that good? I don't know. The other thing I'll say is that I personally believe the best progression system is actually Anna Donlin on Valorant, and I would talk about this. It was like the sticker book. It's the sticker book that shows all the things that you've achieved and all the things you've, like, your history. And we always wanted to do that for League. The skin collector and the icon collector was kind of that. But I wish we had something like that for TFT, where it was like played 500 games in set 1, played 500 games in set 2. That that legacy building. I think that's the most fun version of a progression system. So, sticker book is just achievements. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking similar. The only difference is that when you use the word achievement, you usually think something hard to achieve. I'm not looking for things hard to achieve, right? I think achievements are bad, right? I don't want people going, played a game of TFT and hit every 3-star 5 cost. Like, Instead, what I just want is a celebration of, like, your engagement and excitement. That's not an achievement. That's just, you've been playing a while. And yeah, someone said achievements lost all meaning in games. It's part of that, right? Like, achievements used to be do this really cool, rare thing. Now it's like, logged in. Achievement unlocked. Bought something from the store for the first time. Achievement unlocked. Like, no thank you. But yeah, like, I would love a sticker book. Like, imagine a sticker book that was like competed in a professional game, and it's like, cool. Or everyone who went to Worlds competed in a Worlds event. Cool. Like, I don't know, stuff like that. So, hey, Mort, question for you. Are you still making it to KBBQ? Man, okay. I know you didn't do this intentionally, so I don't actually hold ill will. So okay, sorry, this is a side thing. D-Lim is part of GAT team. I like D-Lim a lot. I was supposed to go to KBBQ with GAT team last Thursday. I was at the office, was going to go. Scheduled for 5. I didn't know where this place was. I'm an idiot and didn't think about it. Around 4:40, I'm like, hey, are we going to head there? I'm going to go walk over to GAT's desk and see if they're there and see if I can go with them. I look around, no one's there. I'm like, where'd they all go? No one's here. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just head myself. I checked my my Uber. It says it'll take an hour and a half to get there. I'm like, what? And keep in mind, it's only 10 miles away, but LA. I'm like, so then I start messaging the GAT team. I'm like, did you guys leave? And they're like, yeah, we left at 4. I'm like, nobody told me. Ah! So it was too late for me to go, and I missed KBBQ. And I was actually really sad about it. Like, I actually messaged my wife, and I'm like, well, now I don't get food. That was pretty sad. But I also felt bad because it was a time to actually sit with the GAT team and talk with them. And I missed KBBQ. My fault, but also, how does it take an hour to get 10 miles? Welcome to LA. Welcome to LA. So, I was, if you don't believe me, you can ask Jeff, by the way. I was legitimately upset about missing KBBQ. All right, let's do this one. We have 1 hour left. Hey, Mort, thanks for the stream. My boyfriend and I play TFT. I play more, and when he plays with me, he does not know how many champs are left in the pool when he and another comp are playing something similar and wishes to see how many there are. Would this be unhealthy for the game? This is a great question because historically in TFT, I've been on the team too long. And what that does to a person is you start to accept things the way they are as good. One of the biggest mistakes I've made in TFT that most of you don't know about behind the scenes is, remember when we added the shop card glow? It didn't used to glow. We added, so it's like if you have something on your bench and more of them appear in the shop, it glows so you know to buy it. That didn't used to be there. When we first added that feature, I was too much of a hardcore Andy about it. And what I said was, the glow shouldn't appear for 3 seconds. That way, the skill expression of roll downs would still be high. And so that way, when you rolled down, it would still require your eyes to look at it. I was so freaking wrong. I could not have been more wrong on that. I am so glad it appears early. I am glad it appears, to be honest, it's probably still a little too subtle. We could even turn it up. I think seeing players do the really high APM and buy the glows and then react to it, there is still plenty of skill expression in the roll down. But this was me doing that sort of biasy thing where it was like, but the game's always been like this. And because the game's always been like this, I don't want to make it simpler. I was talking to Liv, who's one of our newer team members who came from the Hearthstone team, and it's a similar thing. It's like when you have a thing in production and then you make it easier, people feel like you're taking away skill, but actually it's fine because A, the players didn't even see that beforehand, and B, It's usually like less complicated anyway. And there's a bunch of things in TFT like this that I think are good and like are things we should be exploring more of. And this is an example where I'm like, I've been saying for a long time, you should never see the number in a pool. You should never see it. But maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe it's fine. And it's good to reevaluate these kind of things about the game all the time, right? Like reaffirm your biases, reaffirm if things are okay. Is it really adding that much to the game? So the reality is maybe some point when we find, someone just said there's a fine line between skill expression and quality of life. Yes, absolutely. Right. Great example of this is the item recipes. Memorizing item recipes is not skill. It's not skill. I think the situation where a champion you're looking for is in someone else's shop and you don't know feels real bad. Yeah. So if we come to the conclusion where we're like, no, maybe it's time to look into this, then it becomes a question of how, right? And actually, the thing Ramblin just talked about is a great example, right? Like, let's say there was, this is fake, I'm making this up, but like, imagine you could press tab and it would show all 58 champions and how many were in the pool. I don't know that it would be healthy to have a tab menu with 58 champions and the numbers constantly fluctuating as people roll their shops. That's weird. But if we don't do that, and let's say we just took a snapshot of what it was at the start of the turn, well, then it's lying to you. And so, like, even if I agree that, like, okay, gun to my head, Mort, you have to put that in there, then we have to figure out the UX, we have to figure out the proper way to give you that information. And 58 champion pool sizes is not really the most digestible piece of information. So, yeah, it's a fun design problem, though. But I wanted to talk about that because, again, I think a lot of things being the way they are because the way they've always been isn't the right way to think about the game. So, but yeah, these are a lot of the things that keep me up at night. And if you ever wonder why, like, I think about TFT too much, it's because questions like this, right? I'll just be standing in the shower going, what if we shared pool sizes? How would we share pool sizes? Oh yeah, I should shampoo my hair. Okay, but how would we do that? We'd show, you know, like that's my life. That's how I go through my day, is just stuff like that. Cool. All right, let's do this one. I recognize that name. Do you think testing stuff in for fun game modes is a good way to get interest on adding to the main game mechanics? This going back to your talk about future changes for the game. So, yes and no. I think for fun games is a good way to test things in the sense that you can learn things from for fun games. But it does have to be done carefully and executed well because it can create expectations. Let's use League of Legends and URF as an example. What did we learn from URF for League? Well, we learned players like pressing buttons. Cool. They like killing people. Cool. But did we already know that? Yeah, kind of. And so you have to be careful what takeaways you get from that. Fortune's Favor as an example, I'll be honest, we didn't really learn a lot from Fortune's Favor. Because it turns out, again, if you take TFT and you give everyone tons of gold and tons of items, it's more fun. That's true, just like URF. It is more fun, but does that mean the main game should be that? No, certainly not. But yeah, maybe there is something where it's like Scuttle Puddle. Maybe we learn from Fortune's Favor that something like Scuttle Puddle is good for the game, and there's ways to like turn up the dial once in a while. So yeah, I think the answer is yes, but you just have to be really careful about it. So cool. Okay, this is a hard one. I'm going to try to answer this one. What is systems design and how do you practice for it? So this is a vague question because obviously it can change game to game. But systems design generally is basically how supplemental systems in a game interact with each other and their relationship with each other. So, for example, in something like Call of Duty, your systems design might be like your ammo and your reload speed on a gun. or how quickly that goes. It's like side things on a system. It's interactions. It's not primary interactions. It's like secondary interactions, unless the game is a primarily systems-based game. There's probably a more educated answer for this, and this is one of my weaknesses as a designer, is like a really good summary and a framework that answers this really well. But, you know, the way I would put it in TFT terms is systems design isn't how the champions move and feel and how they cast their spell and how that feels. That's something that like Witty's much better at than I am. But systems design is like, but here are the numbers of that champion and the animation speed. Sakurai also does really good talks on this of like, you know, how all the different relationships of the game rules interact with each other. That's kind of systems. And how do you practice it? This is where I think making things like board games and card games are the best, because board games and card games are primarily all systems. They're less feel, right? Like, a fighting game is going to be a lot of, you know, feels and stuff, and systems are on the back part. But a card game is like all systems. And so make a card game. Morello explains systems design really well. I'd believe that. He was good at that. So, but that's why I always go to like make a card game, right? Is because card game is mostly systems. So, all right. Again, I'm just trying to Valorant TFT crossover win. I mean, Valorant League crossover first. I don't know. I'd love to work with Anna and her team, though. I like Anna. I'm just trying to find a good one here. Here's a good one. This is a good question that I'm not going to have a good answer for. I hit the wrong button. Copy. Paste. Here we go. Okay. I know it is hard to make merch for an auto battler, but is there any future merch like boards, etc. planned? Okay. I'm going to answer this first as a player. I am a massive consumer of merch. I have shelves upon shelves. If you've seen my office tour video of merch, I have way too many plushies, and my wall is littered with amiibo. I have like almost every League of Legends figure sitting in a box right there I could pull out and show you. I love merch. I wish we had more merch. I do. Now, this is where I am now, again, I've talked about this before. I am ignorant, so I'm not, like, I am not an expert here. You should not trust my opinion from here on out. I don't know what it takes to build merch or cost merch. I don't know the return on investment of merch. I don't know what the bottom line is on merch. I don't know, like, hey, if you make X and it sells, what do you get back? I don't know any of that. So, like, I can't speak with any confidence about, like, we should totally make merch. For all I know, making merch would cost us hundreds of thousands. I don't know. Someone on the team probably knows more about that. The only thing I know about merch is this little guy. Because Aegon gave me a little bit of a, like, what does it cost? What do you sell it for? What do you make back? That was my first, like, little lesson on, like, learning what it would be. The other thing is that, from what I understand, when Riot wants to make merch, they have to be really, really careful, because merch can go very bad, right? Like, quality control becomes really, really difficult. If you make bad merch, you lose rep pretty quick. So like, that gets really tough. So I don't know. Do we have any merch planned? I don't know. I wish, I hope. Again, I would consume that merch like freaking crazy, but I trust that the people on my team who are in charge of these areas are making the right decisions around our return on investments and things like that. So I trust that the team is doing that, and they don't need some ignorant designer going, well, here's why you should make merch, because I don't know better than they do. And again, that's just a good attribute. Like, I'm not going to walk up to our merch experts and be like, here's why I think you would do it, and I would totally buy it. They've probably got a whole bunch of reasons why and why not and whatever. So I trust them. And I'll just sit here like you, fingers crossed that we make cool stuff. Because I like cool stuff. I would buy cool stuff. Getting Mortdog also sounds better than getting Kented. True. Will a Poro option always be around if Legend stays? If Legend stays, Poro would always be an option, yes. Yes. All right. Hey Mort, are you satisfied with the game time being 30-ish minutes? Would you want that time to be shorter, and if so, is it feasible? I'm asking because the reason why poker is doing well is because you can remove variance by playing a lot of hands. Yeah, so again, if like, this all comes down to, again, goals and trade-offs, right? If our primary goal was like reduce variance, then yeah, I'd want the games to be quicker. But that's not our primary goal. Our primary goal is make a fun game that you sit down and have fun and have an enjoyable experience. That is goal number one above all else. And to that end, do I think 28 to 40 minutes is the right time? Kinda, yeah, actually. I feel like when it's shorter, it ends up feeling too rushed, and you don't get that same level of like risk reward. I feel like if it's longer, you're like, get me out. I'm actually like, I think our game length is like pretty close to perfect right now for TFT. Don't get me wrong, there are some games out there that you play for shorter and stuff like that, but overall, I'm actually very satisfied. Way back in set 2, it was funny. Medler always used to pick on me, and he'd be like, I want you to try to figure out a way to cut 60 seconds off the game. And so we would do small optimizations. Like, do you remember when PvE rounds had 30 seconds instead of 20 seconds? Or the time between carousel picks went down a second? Like, we did a pass where we were trying to, like, optimize, okay, does there really need to be this downtime here? Is this really important? And we got it down. We lowered average game time by, like, 90 to 120 seconds, which was good. But I think lowering it any more, not good. I think we're in a good spot. Again, if you go 8th early, it's like 25 to 28 minutes. If you win, it's like 32 to 40 minutes. I think those 40-minute games, though, actually feel really exciting. I forget what there was some tournament recently we saw where like a game on set 9 went all the way to 7-6, and I was like, we never see this anymore. But like, there we were. We saw 7-6. So I don't know. I felt pretty good. Overall, I don't think I would change it. I agree that game length is one of the bottlenecks to esports. But again, that's where you have to take goals and you have to take priorities and make a call, right? And I think having a bunch of 5-minute rounds for the sake of esports would make our game worse. So, wouldn't a reverse recombobulator be fun? Instead of evolving the units, they devolve. See, now this is an example where my first reaction to that question is, that sounds awful. And then my designer brain kicks in and I go, okay, how would I make this work? And it's like, okay, what if decombobulator was every unit on the board goes down a bit, and for every unit you're willing to do this with, you get 3 gold. And you're like, oh my god, I got 21 gold, but I devolved my board. Would that be worth it as a silver augment? Maybe. And then we'd go try it. And like, I don't know. Maybe. You know? But like, now someone's saying 3-star. That's where your mind, like, do I want a 2-star 4 cost becoming a 3-star 3 cost? No, I just don't. Like, I would not do that. But fun idea though. All right. 37 minutes left. I'm trying to get through as many as I can. Hey Mort, my favorite degen comp will always be the infamous cat reroll. Are you rated? I know the community hated it and still does, but it just hit so well for me. What is your favorite degen comp in TFT history? Favorite degen comp? Probably still reroll Malzahar from set 2. What I'll also say is that when you say the community hates a comp, I wouldn't take that too seriously. From what I've seen, there are 2 types of community hate for a comp. There is the legitimate community hate and the illegitimate community hate. I don't know a better way to group them. There's probably a better way to group them. There are some times where the community hate is legitimate. It's like, this is a degenerate comp that's really bad. An example here is the Yuumi reroll comp, Dragonmancer Nunu. Dragonmancer Nunu is probably the best example of this, where it's just like, wow, this is just not fun to pace. But then there's the illegitimate hate. This is a comp won and I didn't win, so it's a bad comp. It takes no skill to just play Kaisa and Yasuo every game. It's a bad comp. It's like, well, no, it's just a little strong and you lost to it. Hey, way later. Congrats on Golden Squink. Like, when I see people complain about Yasuo and Kai'Sa right now, I'm like, you're just a whiner. You're just a whiner. There's nothing wrong with Yasuo and Kai'Sa right now. It is a solid comp. Again, it was a little strong, but like, it being a little strong doesn't make it toxic or bad for the game. And I hate it when people complain about stuff like that. And I hate it when they're like, it just takes no skill to just like buy Kai'Sa and buy Yasuo. Like, yes, you just described TFT. Thank you. Quit whining. Get better. So. All right. Were armor or MR traits like Mystics and Defenders considered a mistake, or is it just something that won't be done all the time? It feels like the existence of Mystics would help comp homogeneity. So this is an interesting question. They're not a mistake. They're not in the mistake thing. They may come back someday. But it did feel like for a lot of sets, I want to say like set 4 to 8, they were in every set, right? There was some variation of Mystic, some variation of Defender, and they were in every set. And again, when we talk about like keeping sets fresh, we don't want to do the same thing every time. I think it's time to take a break from Mystics and give them a break. You know, we need to do the break. So the step 1 here is we just needed a break. The step 2 is they're definitely not perfect. I know Kent in particular really hates like Defender, because there is nothing worse than playing an AD comp, running into 6 Defender and going, guess I'll die. Like, you just lose. That's it. It's very binary, right? But the corollary to that is that the expectation that you do lose, because there was nothing worse than, what were they called in set 8? It wasn't Mystic, it was, what did we call them? We called them something else. Aegis. Thank you, chat. Thank you, chat. Where I played 5 Aegis and lost to AP comp, therefore Aegis not good trait. Like, that's the binary way a lot of our players approach it also, right? Is like, I played the anti-magic comp, the enemy had magic, shouldn't I win? And it can't be that either, right? It can't be that binary. It certainly helps you win, but it doesn't guarantee you the win. And so that level of binary, it was like, it was either so strong you did lose, or not strong enough and player expectations got screwed. And so right now we're in the version of this where we're testing, well, what if it's just general defenses and you get tankier, and we go from there. And so we're going to see how this world feels comparatively. Will we ever go back? Maybe, but I also think there's other ways to approach this too. I don't know that I agree that it would help comp homogeneity or whatever. Like, I feel like if Mystic was around, people would still be playing Kai'Sa Yasuo, you know? Like, I don't think that changes much. So I think there's better ways to achieve it. Yeah. Hey Mort, is there any chance of making a gold augment of Wandering Trainer? Personally, this augment feels the most fun and creative. I agree. I think the danger though, like, let's exaggerate for a minute. Wandering Trainer right now is a prismatic that gives you 3 random emblems. Let's say the gold version was a training dummy with 1 emblem, okay? Isn't that just hearts? And if so, wouldn't high rolling Noxus or Demacia or Piltover just be insanely good? It's less fun there. I think it loses a lot of its excitement. One of the reasons Wandering Trainer is so well designed is because like it gives you 3 and like you have to adapt and like pick which one you want to lean into, and that's what makes it well designed. I think a version with less is actually bad, but I do agree that like we should look at Wandering Trainer as a success and figure out how to make it better, you know, or how to do different variations of it. And that's one of the reasons I love the augment refresh we did, is there's a bunch of new success cases and we can lean into those success cases. And I feel like that's how Magic's been doing it for years, right? You make a cool card and then you branch from that card, make even more cool cards. So, oh, here's a good one. How has your life changed after becoming head developer? Not as much how much money do you make, but more of a how much you've learned experience as a human. I think the biggest change is just time. I think if you compare my life to 5 years ago, I was probably playing more games and had more free time. That's probably the biggest change. But I think it's pushed me a lot more, right? I think it's pushed me to think about how I conversation with people. Even today, I still I've been doing this 18 years, 40 years, and I still am learning new things and new struggles. Like, here, I'll be open with you. One of my most recent struggles is that, for better or worse, I like to treat everybody as equals, regardless. Our brand new P2 designer, I'm like, you and I are equals. Let's talk. Let's just talk. My boss, we're equals. Let's just talk. That's just how I approach life. That has drawbacks. I have a reputation now. I'm Mort. I'm the head of TFT. I'm very visible, and my words have a lot more meaning than some random P2. And so if I walk up to somebody and I say, "Oh, this design kind of sucks," and I'm just being casual about it, I might think I'm being casual about it. But what I might have actually just done is broken a poor P2's heart. Mort thinks my design's terrible, and now I'm sad and I want to quit, and it's like, oh crap. That's certainly not what I was meaning to do. But, sorry, P2 is a junior designer. That's our term for junior. I have to be really careful with my words now because my words have a lot of weight. And so I can't get away. Like, the most recent example is we were doing a playtest for set 9, and I was in charge of balancing set 9, and I'm often the worst critic of my own work. And in the playtest feedback doc, I wrote, "This was a miserable playtest. If the set shipped like this, I'd be so mad. The balance has got to get better." I was basically yelling at myself in the playtest feedback doc. But someone read that and was like, wow, our lead dev thinks so poorly of the set, and it really hurt them. And I have to be better about that, right? And so, like, even at 20 years into my career, I'm still learning new things and learning how to approach things. And it's giving me a new take on how to think of things. And yeah, as a leader, offhand comments can also lead people into doing a bunch of work you didn't intend them to do. Yep, exactly. And so I'm learning stuff like that, which is good though. But I think life is fun when you're constantly learning new things and challenging new things. So for example, I had to think of a tactic on how to solve that. And now, to share with you, my tactic is whenever I write my playtest feedback, I write it in my own private doc first, so I can be all heated and passionate about, like, oh, this fucking balance, whatever. And then I edit it to be more professional, and then I put it in the playtest doc. And it's like we learn, but it's important. So stuff like that is where I'm at now. I'm at the point in my career where, even like with the Twitter and the stream, right, I have to be very careful with what I say because things taken out of context. Like, there was that TFT clip where I said, I know more about TFT than anyone, and it got taken out of context with a really crappy thumbnail that made it look like I was being an arrogant asshole, when actually what I said was, Witty knows more about implementation, Dish Soap's a way better player, whatever. I just happen to know more about everything as a whole because of my position. And so it's like, I just have to learn to be careful about stuff like that. Anyway, I went on a bit of a rant, but that's kind of how my life continues to change. Also, my wife's proud of me, so that's cool. Oh yeah, and my parents have been, like, actively following what I do now, which is kind of cool too. Not that they didn't before, but they do. Hey, Mort, don't know if it's already been answered, but to me, most of the patch that have been really rough, Yuumi, Jax, Draven, etc., are a patch with huge nerfs, which buff both ways, skyrocketing some underlying comps to the top. It's pretty impossible to get right in one way at a time. On the other side, like the coming patch, it's often better to just make one-way nerfs or buffs patch with rather small numbers or iterate. Okay, this question gets asked a lot, and I admittedly get pretty short with this question because I hate this question. I really, really hate this question, but let me give it a fair shot here. The first thing is that people often ask, why just, like, not buffs or not nerfs, right? And the answer is because oftentimes you have things in a patch that need both buffed and nerfed. A great example on this patch right now, if Endless Hordes need buffs, which it clearly does, and Zed needs nerfed, which it clearly does. We don't want to wait 2 patches to deal with both, right? Like we can't. We have to do both. So there are going to be buff patches with buffs and nerfs. Sorry. So sorry, I just got distracted by the next question. Oh God. Anyway, the other thing is that a lot of this question implies some like confirmation bias. So even in this question, it's almost like the next patch is a lot of buffs. And it's like, well, it is true, it is a lot of buffs, but it also has nerfs, right? We're also nerfing Zed, we're nerfing Slayer, things like that. So it's got buffs, it's got nerfs, it's got both. You have to do that. The reality is a set's only live for 3 months and you have to act on things really quick. And then there's the third part of this that I really, really hate. And I've been trying for 4 years and I've given up at this point. I'm never going to win this battle. And it's counting the buffs and nerfs. I am so sick of the counting and the buffs or the nerfs. Invoker got buffed 3 ways, therefore it's going to be broken. Which, don't get me wrong, sometimes they're right? Like, if Invoker ends up broken, they're going to be like, see, we told you, you got to count. But that's not the problem. 1 + 1 + 1 is not greater than 6, right? You can't just count the number of buffs. You have to count the severity of the buffs. 3 tiny buffs does less impact than 1 major buff. And buffs are not this binary thing, right? There are degrees. And it just, every time people imply this, it drives me nuts. It's like, they buffed this and this and this. Well, it's like, well, how much did we buff Soraka? Not really. Did Soraka really get buffed? Not really. So it just, I don't know. It drives me really, really nuts. And the answer is, so going back to it, TFT is a very complicated game. There are 58 champions with each one has, 20 different stats, the items, the augments, whatever. It's a very complicated game. We do the best we can. And the funny thing is, if you look at our batting average, we're batting like a 95, 950. Like, most of the changes we do are right. The problem is it's one change. Like, let's look at the Draven patch, right? If you look at the Draven patch, most of the things we did in the Draven patch were correct, right? If you, in fact, most postmortems I've done are like, this is good, 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 this is good. Here's this one giant fuck up that ruined the patch completely. And like, that's how TFT works, is one bad change can ruin everything. And then people go, well, you made that one bad change, therefore you don't know what you're doing, therefore every change is bad, and it cascades into that negativity spiral. Baseball reference. I played a lot of baseball growing up. Got to get that ERA up, or down. Anyway, so, yeah, like I said, I think our approach to this is getting pretty good and pretty refined. We don't balance thrash nearly as often as people think we do. The definition of balance thrashing, like, there has been nothing nearly as bad as Skirmisher. Remember the Skirmisher patch where they went from S tier to F tier? That's balance thrashing. So, yeah. All right, this is the one mod must use question that has come up, and I'm going to entertain this. I shouldn't, but I'm going to. From Kurumph, what can you tell us about your sex life? What I will say is I am a happily married man, and I have no complaints. That's what I'll say. That's all you get. You get that. I have no complaints. I'm keeping your points, Curie. Hey Mort, I've probably got time for about 4 more questions tops. Hey Mort, the chibis are super impressive from an art perspective, but some people have been critical that it monetizes a hostage-taking mechanic. How do you respond to that? And is there a line where you are trapping players in an animation too long? I shouldn't laugh, but I do want to point out that you just compared a 5-second animation to a hostage taking. Like, Is it mildly annoying? Yeah. Is it like, golly, that bothers me a bit? Yeah. Hostage? Okay. I don't know, man. I realize I'm not being super sympathetic here, but my stance on this is still the same. If a 5 to 7 second animation tilts you that hard, work on your mental. Seriously. You can't be that tiltable. If that tilts you, you need work. It's on you. And I get it. Like, I know I'm not being sympathetic, but like 7 seconds of inconvenience bothering you that much? I don't know, man. You live a very nice life if that's what it takes to tilt you that hard. I don't know, man. I don't know. So I stand by it. I don't think it's a hostage taking situation. I think it's a fun, like, okay, you lose, goodbye, here you go, game over screen. And, you know, it is what it is. So my response is, again, toughen up. I'm just being real with you. Toughen up. Okay. Oops. In my opinion, everything in games comes back to player agency. Over the past 9 sets, TFT has worked to cultivate what the right level of agency is for an auto battler. Are there any areas where you think TFT may have gone too far and had to be rolled back? Any barriers you've decided not to break? Yeah, I think Armories has been the best example of this. I think Armories were very well received, but ended up being too much player agency, right? Like, at least in set 5, the very version was like, you always got your best in slot items, always with no trade-off. I think Twisted Fate is a healthier version of this, where it's like you can get your best in slot items, but there's a trade-off of augment power, right? We've got it into a good spot. Man, do you remember the first few patches, the amount of complaints about TF were pretty rough. Now, thankfully, TF is, like, fine. I think the thing with agency in TFT in particular is, again, we talked about how TFT is a game with millions of permutations and millions of combinations and things that you might see once in a lifetime. But if you give players the agency to pick that path every time, they'll pick that same path every time. We definitely have a lot of players that we know, like, if it's viable to keep playing this much, cute. Hostage donated. Mort, how do you respond to the fact that your TFT game has taken us hostage? Nice. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. If you have enough agency to go down that path completely, then all of a sudden you've closed yourself off to all the other paths, and it feels bad. Or if you just have less fun. But I think Legends is a good example where, like, what Legends does is it takes this broad spectrum of possibilities and says, go over here a little bit, or go over here. Like, it shifts your paradigm a bit without blocking it out completely. And it's one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure Legends didn't force you into a particular playstyle. A very common one is people are like, where's the reroll legend? I want a reroll legend. It's like, well, if we gave you Golden Ticket as a legend, all of a sudden the number of permutations and possibilities shrinks like this, right? And so, putting it in simplest terms, we want agency that takes this into this, but not this into this. And so, someone just said Lee Sin. Yeah, but see, Lee Sin's an example where you can play it as a level 8 version as well, right? You play Trade Sector into Strong Board and go to 8. It's not always a reroll. It can support reroll, but it's not forcing you into reroll. Golden Ticket, if you're not playing reroll, you're an idiot. Like, oh, I mean, we kind of answered this one earlier, but I'll dig into it a bit here. It feels like recently, last few sets, balanced threshing has been a big problem, where champions that are strong will get heavily nerfed in the same patch, that a weak unit gets big buffs, and it massively shifts the meta from patch to patch. Are you still learning the best way to tackle patch-by-patch balancing 9 sets in, or is this just something we come to expect in the game? So, I do not think balanced thrashing has got worse. If that's controversial, I'm sorry. I think we have actually gotten a lot better about balanced thrashing since set 5 and set 6. I think what you're seeing is there's been this, like, again, call it hyperbole, call it whatever you want, but there's been this response, like, I don't know how to describe it other than people speak in absolute terms, right? Like, let's look at the Ezreal augment. The Ezreal augment, actually, a better example here is Jeweled Gauntlet. Jeweled Gauntlet, up until last patch, if you ask someone like Goobums or some of the other challenger players, they would tell you that item is unclickable. That item is absolute trash. We gave that item 5 AP. The literal minimum thing we could do to that item. 5 AP. I could not think of a smaller buff. Now it is considered an S tier item that you always slam for its high flexibility. If that is the truth, people are saying 4 AP, 1 AP to be a smartass. Yeah, sure. But if you believe that our game balance thrashes off 5 AP, then you also need to admit that TFT is the hardest game in the world to balance. Like, you can't have it both ways. And that's a lot of what we're seeing now. A lot of the times we are doing small changes. We are doing small adjustments. And it has big implications. And so if that's the case, kind of bear with us here, because no one could do it better, you know? Small changes have big implications. And so then that goes back to, well, then why don't you just do small patches, right? Like, the good example here is literally the C patch we just did, right? All we did was nerf Lux and Kai'Sa, and it quote unquote opened up a bunch of new stuff. Now, did it actually open up a bunch of new stuff? Well, not really, because people were already figuring out that Zed was good. But again, it goes back to our time frame, right? We need to get more things viable quicker. Someone just said, no, you killed Ezreal. Yeah, so Ezreal's another great example, right? All we did was take 2 gold off the silver augment and 3 gold off the gold augment. And if you're telling me 2 gold made Ezreal go from must pick to never pick, A, you're out of your mind, and B, you're saying that TFT is the hardest game in the world to balance. Like, we cannot be expected to balance a game on those axioms. Like, that is just impossible. So, and I will not take any sort of trash talk about, like, well, why don't you just do better? It's like, no. And by the way, for what it's worth, Ezreal is still good. So, we're still seeing Ezreal do very well. So, yeah. All right, running on time. Does the TFT team have or plans to have someone like Leduc, someone who looks out for bugs or interactions to flesh out the game? I mean, you're describing QA. That's, you know, QA, players, things like that. So, yes. It's weird because Nintendo and Riot handled QA a little differently. I'm not going to lie, I'm more in the Nintendo fan. But I think players like Vandril and Leduc are a very interesting paradigm, right? Where it's like, if Vandril or Leduc were hired, would they be as good at their job? That's a question. Like, I don't actually know the answer to that, right? Like, part of it is that they do it for fun. And it turns out when you do something for fun, you're better at it. You're just better at it. Like, I don't know. I've seen artists who do art for fun and they do really good art, and then they get hired and they start to hate it and it feels soulless, right? Like, so I almost worry if you hired somebody like Leduc, he would just like start to get bad at it. Now, that's not to say I don't think someone like Leduc should be rewarded for what he does. I'm actually very grateful people like Leduc exist. I think Leduc's content this set has been amazing. If you're not watching Leduc's videos and you're a TFT fan this set, you are missing out. He has got some great content. But yeah, I don't know. Someone just said players are Riot's QA. I mean, when you have a game with millions upon millions upon millions of players, there are going to be interactions that come up that are that rare. But yeah, honestly, like, there's a bit of that. All right, here we go. Good question here. Whoops. File save. Is the aesthetic of units considered when designing a set? Last set with Star Guardians, you had something more stereotypically cute. This set lacks that and has been the biggest feedback from my girlfriend. Yes. Yes, this is a big thing. This is one of the reasons why I talk about Yordles being the biggest failure this set. It is very important that we have stuff, like you said, that is stereotypically cute, approachable. Yordles in the past were that. I think one of the biggest successes of set 1, buy all the cute Yordles, you have a comp. Good, simple, fun, easy. Literally at the Soul Fighter thing I went to yesterday, I talked to Avali for like 2 minutes, and the first thing she says to me is, "Hey, how come Yordles are so hard to play? I just like Yordles." Yordles were supposed to be this for set 9. We failed miserably. Yordles are not approachable. It's a very hard to play and that's why I'm so hard on it, right? Is because Yordles were supposed to be that thing that, like, I just want to buy all the cute Yordles and do well. It is important that we have that in every set. And so, yes, that is actually a very big thing we take into account. So, for example, when we're looking at set 10, we're like, who are the, like, edgy people going to want? Who are the, like, the cute players? Because it's a big demographic. It's a big demographic of players who like the cute thing. So, was set 6 Yordles considered a success in this manner? Yes. So set 6 Yordles was very successful in this regard, right? You could just buy all the Yordles, the game gave you more Yordles, and you played Yordles. It was great. Where set 6 Yordles failed was it became optimized into an econ trait. And so that's where set 6 Yordle failed. But a lot of casual players really loved set 6 Yordles. I buy Yordles, I get more Yordles. Life is great. So, yeah. Anyway, TLDR is absolutely something we work on. So, all right, let's do 3 more questions, and then I'm gonna have to call it because we're getting that close to that 11 o'clock thing. Old player since first TFT. I've always wondered if ever TFT at a chance will try it out, maybe as a mode first, on having damage types like pierce, light, medium, heavy damage, and defense types, small, medium, heavy. I feel like it's going to be a really hard thing to balance and could be only possible as a standalone maybe. So, I can't speak to this particular idea. Sounds a little complicated, but what I can say is that something what you're describing is the sort of big system level change that I'm talking about for like 2 to 5 years from now, right? Where it's like something wild. And again, I'm literally making this up on the fly. This is not something I'm talking about from our game. But like, let's say Champions had, well, I'll use Fire Emblem actually for a better example. They had weapons equipped to them for this set, and like sword beats axe and axe beats spear and spear. Like, if we added that to TFT, could that make the game more interesting? Maybe. And maybe as over time goes on, that's something we need to explore. Because again, I think we can't just rest on our laurels and have TFT work the way it does. Now, that being said, I'm skeptical of something like this specific interaction, though, because we already have, AD, AP, armor, MR, crit. We're already such a stat-heavy game. I'm skeptical more stats and more interactions is the way to go. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone has a great idea there that could fit. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Just trying to answer as many as I can here. Hey Mort, hope you have a great day. If you have 2 of the same 1-2-star champ on board, both with 3 items, and you combine them, which item set is picked? Is it random? Couldn't find an answer online. So the way this works, this is a quick one. A bunch of you probably already know this, but for those who don't know this, the way it works is it's Thieves' Gloves greater than full items, greater than components. So Thieves' Gloves takes priority first, then a full item, then a component. And then it's the things on the board first, then things on the bench. So for example, if you had 2 with 3 items on the board, 1 with 3 items on the board, 1 with 3 items on the bench, and they combine, all the ones on the board will stay. And in the event of a tie, it's random. So if you accidentally leave 2 3-item Talias on the board and they combine, good luck. You're going to get 3 random items on that Talia. So now someone just said, why not just kick all the items off? So again, this goes back to that conversation from earlier about like maybe it is time to get rid of old archetypes. I could see a world where kicking all the items off does make sense. It would be easier, right? It just like always prevents the error. Admittedly, again, I'm a little skeptical. I think what I don't want, where I think that starts to fall apart, is imagine you play a static shiv early for tempo and then combine a unit to pop it off to move it later. Like, I don't want to get into that world. But I do think items being stuck on champions is one of those archaic things that maybe it's time to move on from someday. So something to think about. Again, these are these things that, like, every year or so, we should just be asking ourselves, is this still right? Is this still good for the game? Is this still the right thing? Are we sure we're making the right decision? So, yeah. Have you ever considered an item like Blade of the Ruined King in League that does a % of max health with auto attacks or abilities? We used to have it. That actually used to exist. It became very hard bound to specific champions. And the thing about it in TFT that we ended up not liking is it feels very... like, I don't know why League does it. They probably have a better answer than I do. But the thing that feels really bad in TFT is I shoot a 1-star Jhin and I hit for 10 damage. And then I shoot a 3-star Mordekaiser or some, whatever, and I hit for 80 damage. It's almost nonsensical to, like, hit really weak champ 10 times. Like, it feels wrong. I want to punch a 1-star 1-cost champion, and I want to kill him. And I want to punch a 3-star 5-cost and, like, barely struggle to get through him. And that weird dynamic of, like, getting weaker when you hit weak targets, I don't think fits well in TFT. So every time we've tried that, I've ended up, like, just not working. Because, yeah, it used to be Giant Slayer. Giant Slayer used to be, like, 5% true damage on hit. No, it's not the same thing as Giant Slayer. That's what Giant Slayer used to be, and it was terrible. Now Giant Slayer is like, well, you can beat better targets a little better. But it's still a little better. So, I don't think it's the same thing. This will probably be our last question. No, why did I press the wrong button? Okay. There are lots of people that love you and what you're doing, but whenever something goes wrong about TFT, most of the people get mad, pointing the issue directly at you and only you. How do you deal with lots of toxicity during these times? I talked about this a little bit. I won't dive too deep into this because we talked about this recently, but take a deep breath, walk away. And again, I'd rather the team be mad. I'd rather people be mad at me than the team because it allows the team to just focus on fixing things and making things better. You kind of have to ignore it to some extent, so as much as you can. And again, people just like to be mad, so it is what it is. If you want a better answer, you can probably watch the Vashir clip. He has a clip of me talking about it from the Draven thing. That's a much more detailed answer. I don't want to tread on old ground as we try to squeeze in some last questions. If you had to take down one Riot game, which would it be, Forge not included? That's a mean question. That's a mean question. I'm going to dodge that question. I don't like that question. I don't want to take someone's hard work and say, go away. If that makes me a coward, I'm a coward. All right, this is probably the last question here. Hey Mortdog, do you believe you found a good spot in terms of patch frequency? Sometimes it feels like patches are fun and mostly balanced, but then the stuff is changed for the sake of change. Would you ever skip a patch even if there's one scheduled? Oh, so this is kind of redundant. I answered this at the beginning, but we do not do change for the sake of change. I promise you, we've never do change for the sake of change. If we launched the set at a balanced state day one, we would go 3 months without patching. Like, that's still the goal, you know? We do not do change for change's sake. But right now, for example, you look at the current patch and it's like, have you ever tried to run a tank Galio? It doesn't work, right? We got to fix that. Have you ever tried to run reroll Cassiopeia? It doesn't work. We got to fix that. Like, these are the reasons we're making change. It's not just change for change's sake. It's we're trying to make the game better. Never will we make change for change's sake. I promise you. Because anytime we're like, someone's like, we can make change for change's sake, I promise you, we would rather be doing a different project. We would rather be improving something else rather than just constantly changing for the sake of change. Nobody wants that job. Nobody wants to be on the team that's like, what are we balancing today? Spin the wheel. And yeah, no thank you. Friend got a natural Ori 3 on stage 2 and had to sell at stage 3 to be stronger. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that can't be okay. That's a thing we have to fix. So, okay, that is going to do it for me today. Hope you enjoyed this QA stream. Again, I'll try to do more of these. I know people like these. They're pretty fun. Hopefully this is good. And like I said, when I get to answer the questions, I get to focus here, which is nice. So I will be back on the weekend as normal to stream. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll refund everyone their points. And yeah. All right. Until next time, that's going to do it for me. Take it easy.